Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, it's Dark Horror Narrations. I like to do long form horror stories that you can fall asleep to. All the stories on here are written and narrated by myself. Tonight's episode is the start of a new series that I am developing, basically called Skinwalkers Are Assholes, as seen in the title. If this story does well and performs well, gets lots of likes, engagements, good view time, things like that, I will definitely look into expanding this. So if you guys enjoyed this video tonight, this story, make sure you like, you comment, you watch all the way through, things like that, so I can see all of those metrics in the background. That tells me that this was a popular story, that you guys liked it, that you want more of the series to continue. So other things, as a quick reminder, again, I've been seeing a lot more, the gripes and complaints, valid gripes and complaints about the ads and the videos. Keep in mind, guys, I try to put ads, keep them to a minimum. I even try to front load them, like only put them before the story, so that way during the story there is no ads. Every single time I have tried to manually place ads, YouTube has been like, nope, you're not putting enough ads in the story. We're going to overrule your ad placement and we're going to put more where we want them anyway. So I try to keep them to a minimum, but I have been unsuccessful in finding a way to get YouTube to just let me do what I want to do with the channel as far as ad placements. I got to get paid, obviously, but the amount of ads that they do put in, I do think are kind of egregious. So I just want you guys to know that it is not me doing that. I am trying to not do that, but YouTube keeps overruling me. At the end of the day, their house, their rules. I can only control so much. However, if you are wanting to get completely ad-free, versions of all the stories, I do have a Patreon. That link is down below, right? It's posted everywhere on the channel, to be honest. I am running a promotion right now with the first 100 people that sign up for that will get 3 months of the service completely for free, and you get all the stories that I upload, all the same content that I upload here on Spotify, so on and so forth. But on there's 0 ads ever. And then after those 3 months, if you wish to keep it, there's only $4.99 a month. I don't have a reason to increase the price of that. I know a lot of our subscriptions we all use, Netflix, Hulu, DoorDash, so on and so forth, they always constantly raising the price. I won't have a reason to raise the price because my cost to produce said stories does not change. So $4.99 price for life. Obviously, you don't have to do that, but if the ads are really that much of a deal breaker for you, I understand that, and I want to make sure that we can all enjoy the stories to the maximum, capability. So that is a way to do that and also support me directly. Lastly, before we get into the story, if you guys enjoy the story, YouTube likes to see that there's actual engagement, likes, comments, things like that on videos. If they see videos with just a lot of watch time, but no comments, no likes, nothing like that, they kind of see the channel as bot farming, view farming, if you will. I don't really understand the logistics behind that. That's just what I've come to realize from doing this. So to help prevent the channel from getting possibly demonetized or taken down or anything like that in the future, doing that kind of thing on end of a video would greatly help with saying like, hey, we get actual value out of this video. We get value from this channel. Please, YouTube, don't touch it. Leave it the way it is. We appreciate it. We enjoy the content and we get that value out of it. Please allow the channel to keep producing. Okay, that's enough rambling. We've gone on 4 minutes now, taking up enough time. Let's get into the story. Let's begin into hopefully a long running series. Skinwalkers Are Assholes.
The cigarette was not mine. Marlon had handed it to me without looking, the way he always did, the soft pack flicking open in his palm and the one filter sticking up a little higher than the others like the cigarette knew it was being chosen. I took it. I did not say thanks, because Marlon did not say things back when he was thinking, and he was thinking most of the time. The parking lot lay flat under the sodium lights. The lights at the Dry Wells Walmart Supercenter were the kind that flickered without ever quite going out. There was a hum to them I could feel in my back teeth if I stood under one long enough. The lot was empty except for my Ranger, Danny's old Tundra, Marlon's white Astro van, and Reggie's grandmother's 2007 Civic, which Reggie was not allowed to drive on the highway but drove on the highway anyway because his grandmother slept by 9. It was a Tuesday in the second week of August. The monsoon was on its way out for the year, and the air had that empty after-storm feeling, the smell of wet asphalt and creosote almost gone, the dust starting to come back. The mesas to the north were not visible at 2 in the morning, but I knew where they were. I had grown up looking at them. They had not moved. Marlin was leaned against the bay door with his back to the metal, one boot up on the wall behind him, and he had not said anything for about 10 minutes. The reading glasses were dangling off the cord around his neck. The cord was old enough that the rubber on the ends had started to gray. He smoked a Marlboro Red and watched the parking lot the way he watched everything, which was without seeming to watch it at all. I had been working the overnight stock crew at the dry wells store for 3 years and 2 months. I had started in June of 2023, the summer my mother stopped calling, and the summer Boone first turned gray on the muzzle, and I had not done much else since. The job paid $16.40 an hour, which was not enough to live on anywhere else in the country, but was enough to live on in dry wells, if I did not mind eating gas station hot dogs 4 nights a week, and if I did not mind the single wide my uncle let me put on his land. Out past the wash on 2 Mile Road, I did not mind. The shift ran 10 at night to 7 in the morning. By 2 we were past the worst of it. The first stocking push done, the freezer pulls finished, the pet aisle clean and the cleaning aisle clean, and the only thing left until the morning crew was watching the front and doing whatever Danny needed at the register and pulling whatever last truck got dropped, if a truck got dropped, which it had not tonight. The receiving room was empty, the dock was empty, the lot was empty. The lot was almost always empty after midnight. I took a drag off the cigarette and let the smoke out slow. The wind had picked up a little. A tumbleweed the size of a basketball was tracking across the lot from the south corner, slow at first and then faster as it caught a gust, and it rolled across the empty parking spaces and bumped against the concrete base of one of the light poles and got hung up there. It would sit there until morning. Tumbleweeds always sat where they got caught. There was a permanent population of them around the cart corrals and the dumpster fence by the end of any given week. And on Wednesday mornings, the day porter Hector would come out with a leaf blower and a contractor bag and clear them out, and by Friday night they would be back. You ever wonder what happens to those? I said. Marlin did not answer for a while. Then he said, "What?" "The tumbleweeds. After Hector throws them in the dumpster." Marlin looked at me. He had a long face, the kind that had been longer when he was younger and had filled out only a little in the cheeks, even at 62. His eyes were dark and set deep. He still wore his hair the way he had worn it driving the truck, cropped close on the sides and a little longer on top, and it had gone almost entirely silver in the last few years. "They get hauled to the transfer station," he said, "out by the airport." "There's an airport?" "Past the substation, the little one. Nobody flies in or out anymore, but the strip's still there." "Huh. Tumbleweeds get hauled out there and burned twice a year. There's a guy with a permit." "Huh," I said again. Marlin dragged on his cigarette. The cherry flared and gave his face a moment of orange light, and then went down again. He flicked the ash off into the wind. He had a way of flicking ash that was efficient, almost military. Just one quick motion with the thumb and the cigarette stayed otherwise level. I had tried to do it that way, and it never worked when I tried, so I just tapped my ash off the end with my index finger, like everybody else. The radio in the receiving room was playing something I could hear through the open bay door, but could not quite identify. Marlin kept the radio on a country station out of Albuquerque that came in clear at night and went to static during the day. The song had a slide guitar in it. The song had been playing a long time. I thought it might be a Hank Williams song, but I could not tell with the wind. Marlin had been at the store 6 years when I started. He had been driving truck for 32 years before that, mostly out of Las Cruces, mostly the Western Circuit, and he had stopped driving when his lower back finally said it was done. He took the Walmart job because the night shift kept him out of the heat, and he kept the Walmart job for the same reason. He lived in a casita he rented from a man named Dominguez, who owned the property next to the substation. He did not talk about a wife. He did not talk about kids. He had a niece in Albuquerque who he called twice a month, and a brother who had died young, and I knew this because Reggie had asked him once when Reggie was still in his first week and did not know any better, and Marlon had answered him briefly the way a man answered a kid who had asked. After that, Reggie had let it alone. Marlon and I did not talk much. We did not have to. We worked the same aisles for 3 years. He pulled the heavy stuff, and I pulled the high stuff, because I was a half-foot taller and his back was his back. He took the loading dock smoke break at midnight, and again at 2, and again at 5. I took mine when I felt like it, which usually meant I joined him. He had given me my first cigarette in 3 years on my first night at the store, and he had been giving me cigarettes ever since. I had told him once that I should buy my own pack, and he had said, "When you start, you start." I had not started. That night, the cigarette he had given me at 2:15 tasted the way Marlboro Reds always tasted, which was like the inside of a barn. The smoke went out into the lot, and the wind took it. I watched it go. That was when the truck pulled in. It came in slow off the Interstate 40 frontage and turned into the lot at the south entrance, which was unusual because the south entrance was for the auto bay, and the auto bay was closed at night. The truck was an older Ford F-250, white or maybe cream, with a long bed and a rust spot on the driver's side fender. It rolled across the empty lot with its lights on low beam. The lights were a little yellower than they should have been, like the bulbs had not been replaced in a long time, or like the lenses had gone the color of old butter. The truck pulled into a spot facing the store, about halfway across the lot, in the row that customers usually use during the day. There were no other vehicles within 40 spaces of it on either side. The engine cut. The lights stayed on for a long moment after the engine cut. Then the lights went out. I watched it. Marlon watched it. Neither of us said anything. The driver door opened. A man got out. He was tall, taller than the truck door, which is the kind of detail I noticed and filed away without thinking much about it. He stood in the open door for a second, the way people stand when they are stretching after a long drive, and then he stepped down onto the asphalt and shut the door behind him. He did not slam it. He shut it the way someone shuts a door who has been around the truck a long time and knows exactly how much pressure it needs. He started walking toward the store. The lights in the parking lot threw 4 shadows off everything that walked under them, 1 for each pole in the nearest cluster, and the shadows fanned out at angles, so that anyone walking across the lot trailed shadow in 4 directions, faintly. I had walked across that lot 10,000 times. I knew how the shadows fell. The man walking toward the store had shadows. He had 4 of them. They came off him at the right angles, fanning out the way shadows did, 3 behind him and 1 in front. The one in front was wrong. It took me a second to see it. The other 3 shadows moved when his feet moved. They picked up and set down when his feet picked up and set down. They were synchronized to him the way shadows are. The one in front did not. The one in front kept pace with him in space, but lagged behind in motion. When he took a step, the shadow took a step a half beat later. When he swung his arm, the shadow swung its arm a half beat later. They were close enough that anyone not looking for it would not have seen it, but they were not in sync. I watched it for the time it took him to cross 30 feet of asphalt. The wrong shadow took 30 feet of asphalt with him. It did not fix itself. I looked at Marlon. Marlon was already looking at me. "Yeah," Marlon said. That was the first time he had ever answered a question I had not asked. He flicked his cigarette into the lot, where it lay on the asphalt with the cherry still glowing, and he reached up and pulled the bay door chain to start the door rolling down. "Inside," he said. I had not finished my cigarette. I crushed it under my boot anyway and followed him. The bay door rattled down behind us and hit the concrete with a thump that was louder than I remembered it being. Marlon went straight through the receiving room without stopping, past the conveyor belt and the pallet jacks lined up against the wall, and pushed through the swinging doors onto the sales floor. I followed. The store at 2 in the morning was the kind of empty that pretended not to be empty. The fluorescents were all on, the music was playing through the overheads at the low Tuesday night volume, the registers were all powered up with their displays glowing, and there was nobody in any of it. The space was set up for 100 people and held 4. The way the air felt in a place like that, I had decided a long time ago, was the actual sound of capitalism. A sound like a held breath. Danny was at the front. She was behind the customer service counter, leaned on her elbows, working a pen between her teeth. The pen was a big stick with the cap off, and the cap was on the counter in front of her, and the cap had the bite marks of about 50 other caps the cap was about to join. She looked up when she saw us coming. "Y'all done smoking?" she said. "Got a customer coming," Marlin said. She straightened. She did not ask any of the things she could have asked. Marlin and I were not customer coming kind of people when we came in from the dock. We were stalking kind of people. If Marlin said a customer was coming, and that was sufficient information for Danny to start running through the procedural list in her head, which I could see her doing, because Danny did not hide it when she was thinking. She pulled the pen cap into her palm and pocketed it without breaking the count, 23 or 24 or whatever pen cap that one was, and she stepped out from behind the customer service counter and walked toward register 4, which was the only register lit on the front row at that hour. "Reggie's and Pets," she said over her shoulder, "doing a recovery. Tell him to stay there," Marlin said. She nodded. She picked up the phone on the wall behind register 4 and punched 2 numbers and waited, and then she said into the receiver, "Reg, stay in Pets till I tell you," and hung up before whatever Reggie said back to her registered. Marlin stood at the end of the front lanes and looked at the front doors. The doors slid open. The man came in. He was tall, like I had thought from across the lot, but in the light of the front entrance, the tall did not look threatening. He looked like a man. He was maybe 45, maybe 50. He had on a denim work shirt buttoned up to the throat, the cuffs buttoned at the wrists, and a pair of canvas work pants that were faded at the knees but clean. His boots were brown. The boots had been broken in by somebody and worn for a long time. His belt was tooled leather with a worn-out brass buckle. He was holding a wallet in his left hand, just holding it, like he had taken it out of his pocket before he got out of the truck and forgotten to put it back, and he carried it loose at his side as he walked. His hair was dark, going gray at the temples, parted on the left. He had the kind of face I had seen on 1,000 men in this country, lines around the eyes from sun, a nose that had been broken once a long time ago and not set right, a jaw that had not shaved since the day before. He walked past Marlin without looking at him. He walked past me without looking at me. He did not look at Danny as he came up to register 4. I watched the floor under him as he walked. The shadows on the sales floor were different from the shadows in the lot, because the overhead fluorescents were closer and more diffuse, and the shadows did not fan out the way they did under sodium poles. Inside the store, every person had one shadow, faint, pooling around their feet, almost not there at all. The man had one shadow. I looked harder. His shadow was pooled around his feet, the way mine was pooled around my feet. It moved with him. It was where it should be. I watched him walk 12 feet, and the shadow walked 12 feet, and I waited for the lag I had seen in the lot, and the lag did not come. I thought, maybe I imagined it, I thought it the way I had thought a lot of things in the last few years, which is to say, I did not actually believe it. I had been telling myself I imagined things for a while. I had gotten good at it. I had told myself I imagined the porch light at my uncle's place going on by itself one night last fall, and I had told myself I imagined a footprint in the dust by the wash that was too long and too narrow to be a coyote and was not a coyote, and I had told myself I imagined the dog refusing to walk past a piece of fencing on 2 Mile Road for 2 weeks straight last spring, even though the fencing had not changed. I had told myself a lot of things. The man set the wallet on the conveyor belt at register 4. The conveyor belt was off. He set the wallet down anyway, like that was the place where wallets went. "Just this," he said. He had not put anything else on the belt. Danny looked at the wallet. She looked at him. She looked at Marlin, briefly, the way she did when she was confirming she was reading a situation right. Marlin did not move. "Just the wallet, sir?" she said. "Hunting knife," he said. The wallet was on the belt. There was no hunting knife. Danny looked down at the wallet again. Then she looked behind him, scanning the aisles, scanning to see if maybe he had set the knife down somewhere on the way and not noticed. "Sir," she said, "is the knife at customer service? Did you ask somebody to hold it?" The man did not answer. He stood with his hands at his sides. He stood in a way I had not seen another person stand. His weight was on both feet evenly, perfectly, the way a man stood when he was being measured at the doctor's office, with no shift to either hip and no slack in either knee. He held that posture without effort. He held it the way a fence post held a posture. Danny waited a beat. Then she said, "Sir, I can call someone over to Sporting Goods, but I need to know which knife you wanted." "Hunting knife," he said again. His voice was flat. It was an ordinary man's voice in pitch and timbre, but it was missing something. It was missing the small adjustments a voice made when it was talking to a person. The little pacing things, the way a vowel got longer when somebody was thinking, the way a sentence sloped down at the end. His voice did not slope. It was 3 notes long, and the third note landed where the first note had landed. I listened to him say the words, and underneath them I thought I heard something else. Not a second voice, exactly. A second tone. A dry rasp, almost too low to register, sitting under the human pitch like the buzz of a power line a quarter mile away. I could not have heard that for sure. I was probably hearing it because I was already looking for something to hear. That was what I told myself. Danny picked up the phone behind her again and punched another 2 numbers and said, "Reg, get up to the front. Bring a hunting knife from Sporting Goods. Your call." "Which one?" She listened for a second, and then she said, "Just bring one, Reg," and hung up. The man stood at the register. He did not look at Danny. He did not look at me. He did not look at anything. His eyes were on the wall behind Register 4, slightly above her head, on the cigarette display case that was locked behind glass. He was not reading the brands. He was just looking at the case the way a man might look at a wall when he was tired. Marlon had moved up so that he was about 10 feet to the man's left, not blocking the lane, not in any kind of stance, just standing there with his arms loose at his sides and his weight slightly forward on his toes. I had not seen him stand that way before either. I had not understood until that moment that Marlon could stand that way. Reggie came around the corner from the back of the store at a fast walk. He was holding a buck knife in its plastic clamshell packaging, the kind they hung off the pegs in the hunting aisle, and he had it held out in front of him like he was carrying a fish to the kitchen. "This okay?" he said, to Danny, to me, to whoever. "That's fine," Danny said. Reggie set the knife on the belt next to the wallet. He stepped back from the register. He looked at the man. The man did not look at him. Reggie looked at me, and the look was the look I had seen on Reggie's face the time he found a customer asleep in the lawn furniture aisle at 4 a.m., which was a look that said, "I did not know what to do, so I came looking for you." I did not move. Danny scanned the knife. The scanner beeped. The price came up on the display, $47.96. $47.96, she said. The man took the wallet off the belt and opened it. The wallet was old. The leather was worn smooth at the corners. He pulled out a $50 bill. The bill was crisp. It was crisp in a way. $50 bills were not usually crisp coming out of a wallet that worn. It was crisp the way a bill was crisp coming out of the bank teller's drawer that same morning. He laid the 50 on the belt, the way he had laid the wallet. Danny took the 50. She gave him his change, $2 bills and 4 pennies, counting it out into his palm. His palm was wide and flat. The skin on it was the color of his face, which was a normal color, with the lines a man his age would have. The change went into his palm, and his hand did not close on it. He held it open like a saucer. Danny looked at his open palm. The man dropped the change into his shirt pocket without looking down at it. The pennies clinked. He picked the knife up off the belt. "Cole," he said. I have heard my name in a lot of voices. I have heard it from teachers in elementary school, and from a girl I dated in high school, and from my father before he died, and from Marlon and Danny and Reggie and Uncle Ray and 100 customers across 3 years of name tag. The way my name sounded coming out of his mouth was the way it would have sounded coming out of any of those mouths. In pitch and shape, it was just my name. Except it was my name said by a man who had not looked at my name tag, because my name tag was hanging from the back of my belt, where I had clipped it during the freezer pulls and forgotten to clip it back. He did not say anything else. He turned with the knife in his hand, and he walked back across the front of the store and out through the sliding doors and into the parking lot. The doors slid open and slid shut behind him. The doors made the small chime they made when they opened. The chime sounded the way it always sounded. The four of us did not move for what felt like a long time, but was probably about 10 seconds. Danny spoke first. "What the hell?" she said. She said it quietly. It was not a question. "Reg, get back to pets," Marlon said. Reggie did not move. "Reg," Marlon said. "Yeah," Reggie said. "Yeah, okay." He did not move. "Reg," I said. Reggie looked at me. His face had gone the color of milk that had been left out for an hour. "Did he know your name?" Reggie said. "He knew my name." "How did he know your name?" "Reg, go to pets," Marlon said. He said it the way he might say it to a child, gently, like he was not asking. Reggie went. He went slow. He went the way a person walks when they want to look back over their shoulder, but cannot get their neck to do it. Danny picked up the phone and pressed the 2 buttons that called the back office, which at this hour rang in the dark and went to a voicemail nobody checked. She let it ring 4 times. Then she hung up. "Nobody," she said. "Who would you call?" Marlon said. She did not answer that. She came out from behind the register and walked over to where Marlon and I were standing. She kept her eyes on the sliding doors. The doors had not moved since the man went through them. The lot beyond the doors was not visible from the angle I was standing at, but Danny could see it from where she was, and I watched her face while she looked. "He's getting in his truck," she said. "Yeah," Marlon said. "He's getting in his truck and he's starting it up." "Yeah." "He's pulling out of the lot. He's going back to the frontage." "Yeah," Marlon said. She did not move until the truck was out of her sight. Then she turned, and she looked at Marlon, and she said, "What just happened?" "Customer bought a knife," Marlon said. She waited. Marlon lit another cigarette. He was not supposed to smoke inside the store. He had never smoked inside the store in the 3 years I had worked with him. He lit the cigarette without looking at either of us, and he took one drag off it, and he held the smoke for a long time, and when he let it out, it came out gray and slow. "We should call the sheriff," Danny said. "And tell them what?" Marlon said. "Tell them a guy came in and bought a knife. That's not against the law. Tell them a guy came in and knew Cole's name. That's not against the law either. Then tell them a guy came in and made me feel like somebody was going to die before sunup." Marlon looked at her. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, that one's a problem." He took another drag. "That one's a problem because Lena's on tonight, and Lena's not going to write that one down." Danny knew Lena Boyd. Danny knew Lena, because everybody in Dry Wells knew Lena, the deputy who had grown up there and gone to Iraq and come back and joined the sheriff's office, and who took the Dry Wells beat 3 nights out of every 5. Danny had gone to high school with Lena's younger sister. Danny did not have a problem with Lena. Danny had a problem with paperwork. Paperwork was the problem Danny had with most things at 2 in the morning. "I want it written down," Danny said. "I'll call her," I said. I had not meant to say it. The words came out, and I was the one who had said them, and I noticed I had said them about a half second after they were said, the way I noticed a lot of things that involved me at that time of night. Marlon looked at me. Danny looked at me. "You'll call Lena," Marlon said. "Yeah, at 2 in the morning. She'll be up. She'll be up because she's on duty, Cole. That's different from being up. I'll call her." I went to the phone, I picked up the phone, I dialed 9 for the outside line, and then I dialed Lena's cell, which I had in my head because I had had it in my head since I was 16, when she had given it to me on the back of a Sonic receipt with the words, "Don't call me unless you mean it," written under it in blue pen, and which I had not used in 3 years. The phone rang twice. She picked up. "Boyd," she said. "Lena, it's Cole." There was a small pause. I could hear the inside of her cruiser, the hum of the engine at idle, the radio going low on the dispatch channel, the squeak of leather as she shifted in the seat. I could hear her drinking out of her mug. "Cole Patterson," she said. "Yeah? You all right?" "Yeah." "Where are you?" "At the store." "You're at work." "Yeah." "And you're calling me." "Yeah." She did not say anything for a second. "What happened, Cole?" I opened my mouth. I tried to say something. The thing that wanted to come out of my mouth was, "A man came in here and his shadow walked wrong and he knew my name and he bought a knife and I could feel it in my throat ready to come out and I could not say it." I said, "A customer came in and made us nervous. Danny wants it written down." Lena was quiet for another second. She drank from her mug. "Nervous how, Cole?" "He knew my name. My tag wasn't on." "What else?" "Stood weird. Didn't blink. Bought a hunting knife." "What else?" She was good. She was good in a way that surprised me a little, even though I had known her since I was a kid. She was waiting. She was not jumping in. She was waiting for the part I had not said yet, because she could hear in my voice that there was a part I had not said yet. I held the phone. I held it for about 3 seconds. "He had 2 shadows in the lot," I said. "One of them moved wrong." The line was quiet. Lena did not breathe out, did not laugh, did not say what. She said, "Cole, are you anywhere where you can be alone for a minute?" "I'm in the front of the store." "Get somewhere you can be alone." "The back office. The break room. Not the dock." "Why not the dock?" "Not the dock, Cole." I looked at Marlin. Marlin was watching me. He could not hear Lena's side of the conversation, but he was reading mine, and what he was reading was already making him stand a little differently again. "I'll go to the break room," I said. "Good. I'm coming. I'm 12 miles out. I'll be there in 15. Don't go in the lot." "Lena," I said. "What?" I did not know what. "Yeah, okay," I said. She hung up. I held the phone for another second after she had hung up, and then I put it back on the cradle, and I looked at Marlin and at Danny, and I said, "Lena's coming." "Good," Danny said. Marlin did not say anything. He finished his cigarette inside the store, in the front lanes, with the smoke going up into the fluorescence and curling against the dropped ceiling. Then he turned and walked back toward the dock without telling anybody where he was going. "Marlin," Danny said. He kept walking. Marlin, the bay door. He did not stop. He went through the swinging doors at the back of the store and out into the receiving room. The doors swung shut behind him. We could hear him cross the receiving room, and we could hear the chain on the bay door rattle. We could hear the bay door start to roll up. Danny looked at me. "He's going back out for a smoke," she said. "He just had a smoke. He just had 2 smokes. He's going back out." I did not say anything. She picked the pen cap off the counter where she had left it earlier, and she put it in her mouth and bit down on it. The plastic clicked between her teeth. "Cole," she said. "I don't know what the hell that was." "Yeah," I said. "And I don't know why you called Lena instead of 911. "Yeah," I said. "And I don't know why she came on the line saying your name like she already knew." I did not have an answer for that one either. The fluorescence hummed. The music played at low Tuesday night volume. The doors did not slide. The lot beyond the doors was empty again. The tumbleweed by the light pole had not moved. I checked my watch. It was 2:26 in the morning. Lena had said 15 minutes. She was going to be there at 2:41. The clock on the wall behind the customer service counter was 3 minutes fast. I had been reminding myself of that for 3 years. It always took a second. By the slow clock, it was 2:26. By the fast clock, it was 2:29. The difference was a small difference. The difference was the kind of difference I had never paid attention to. Tonight the difference felt important. Danny took the pen cap out of her mouth and set it on the counter. She picked up another pen out of the cup by the register and pulled the cap off that one too, and put the new cap in her mouth. She did this without seeming to know she had done it. "Cole," she said. "Yeah." "Where did he go to?" "Marlin." "Doc." "Why?" "He's looking for something." "Looking for what?" I did not answer, because I did not know. I knew Marlin was looking for something the way I knew a hawk was hunting when it was perched on a fence post not eating. I knew because of his shoulders. I knew because of the slow, careful way he had walked back through the swinging doors, without making them swing too hard. I picked up the phone again. I dialed 2 numbers. The phone rang back in the dock. It rang 7 times. Marlin did not answer. I hung up. I dialed 2 numbers again. It rang 7 more times. He did not answer. Should we go check on him? Danny said. Lena said, don't go to the dock. Lena said, don't go to the lot. Lena said both. She had not. Lena had said the lot. She had not said the dock. But the lot was where Marlon was probably going, because the dock was just a way to get to the lot, and the bay door had been rolling up when we had heard it. I did not want to follow Marlon out into the lot. Not yet. Not until Lena was there. Cole, Danny said. Yeah, I need to tell you something. She had taken the pen cap out of her mouth again. She was holding it in her fingers. She was looking at me sideways, not full on, and the look she was giving me was a look I had not had from her in the 3 years I had worked with her. It was a look that said, I do not want to tell you this, but I am going to tell you anyway, and after I tell you, I cannot untell you, so listen. Okay, I said. You remember about 3 months ago. The thing with the security cameras. I remembered the thing with the security cameras. The thing with the security cameras had been in May. The footage for the overnight on the Thursday in May had not recorded properly. The system had shown it recording. The lights on the boxes in the back office had been on. The timestamps had advanced normally, and when corporate had requested the footage for an unrelated reason 2 weeks later, the file for that Thursday night had been a black screen with no audio. They had blamed it on a system error. They had pushed an update. Yeah, I said. I checked the cameras on Register 4 just now. Okay. While he was here. Okay. While he was here, Register 4 cameras were showing the lane. The whole lane. The belt, the register, me at the register. Okay. He was not in the picture. I stood there at the customer service counter and I looked at her face. She was telling me the truth. She was telling me the truth in the way Danny told the truth, which was flat and unornamented, with her chin a little forward. He was standing in front of you, I said. He was standing right there at the belt for the better part of 2 minutes. He was on the floor in front of Register 4. Both of you saw him. I saw him. The cameras did not see him. You're sure? I watched it on the monitor while he was standing there. I checked. I thought maybe the angle was bad. I thought maybe the camera was glitching. So I pulled up the second angle, the one mounted on the sidewall, and that one didn't have him either. There was a big display in the way of where he should have been, and the big display was on camera, and the big display had nothing in front of it. I thought about that. I thought about what it meant to know somebody had stood in front of me and bought a knife and walked out with the change in his shirt pocket, and to know at the same time that the 2 cameras pointed at the place where he had been standing had not seen him. I did not have anything to say. I am only telling you because Lena is coming, Danny said. And when Lena gets here, she is going to want to pull the cameras. Yeah. And when Lena pulls the cameras, she is going to see what I saw. And she's going to look at me. And I am going to have to tell her what I am telling you. Yeah. And I want you in the room when I tell her. I'll be in the room. She nodded. She put the pen cap back in her mouth. She did not say anything else. The fluorescence hummed. The clock on the wall said 2:31. The slow clock said 2:34. There was no longer a difference in my head. The 2 of them were the same number to me now. I looked toward the back of the store. The swinging doors to the receiving room were stilled. I could not hear the bay door anymore. The store felt large. The store had always felt large, in the way the inside of a stadium felt large when the seats were empty, but tonight it felt large in a different way. It felt large like an aquarium with the lights on at the wrong hour, with the corners receding into a glass that did not quite reflect. I thought, do not look behind you. I had not thought a thing like that in a while. The doors to the receiving room swung. Marlon came back through them. He came back through them at the same walking pace he had left at. He came up the main aisle toward the front of the store, not fast, not slow. When he got to where Danny and I were standing, he stopped, and he looked at me, and I saw what I had not seen from a distance. His hands were shaking. Marlon's hands did not shake. Marlon's hands had been steady on the wheel of a tractor-trailer for 32 years, and steady on a pallet jack for 9 years after that. Marlon's hands had been steady when he was lighting cigarettes in the wind. They were not steady now. They were trembling, the way the hands of a man who had just put down a heavy thing trembled when he set it down, except Marlon had not just put down a heavy thing. He also smelled He smelled like creosote. Creosote was the smell of tar and the smell of railroad ties and the smell of the chemical they used on telephone poles. And the smell got into the air when the ground was hot enough, and the smell stuck to anybody who had been around a treated piece of wood for any length of time. It was not the smell of the parking lot. There were no creosote-treated ties or poles within 100 yards of the bay door. The closest railroad bed was the old Santa Fe alignment north of town, 6 miles from where we stood. Marlin smelled like he had been standing in the middle of a rail bed. "You went to the rail bed," I said. "No," Marlin said. He looked at me. His face was the color his face usually was. His face was steady. Only his hands were not. "Where did you go, Marlin?" He did not answer that. He walked past us, into the front-end break area behind the customer service counter, where the lockers were and where the time clock was, and he sat down in the molded plastic chair against the wall. He sat the way a man sat after a hard day, with his hands on his knees and his head back against the wall and his eyes closed. He was breathing slow. He was breathing the way he had taught himself to breathe a long time ago, probably driving truck through some mountain pass in the rain with a load that had shifted. "Marlin," Danny said. "Yeah? You okay?" "No. What do you need?" "Lena, to get here. She's coming." "How long?" 10 minutes. He nodded. He kept his eyes closed. I went to the swinging doors and pushed one of them open a few inches, and looked into the receiving room. The receiving room was empty. The conveyor was still. The pallet jacks were lined up where they always were. The bay door was rolled all the way down, the chain hanging straight against the inside of the metal, and there was no light coming in from the seam at the bottom that there usually was a thin line of in the daytime. I let the door swing closed. I went back to the customer service counter. Danny was standing where I had left her. She had her phone out. She was looking at it. The phone had no notifications on the lock screen, and she was just looking at the lock screen, at the photo of her daughter that she had set as the wallpaper. Her daughter was named Avery. Avery was 6. In the photo, Avery was sitting on the front porch of Danny's duplex with a popsicle, and the popsicle was red, and her mouth was red, and her front teeth were missing, because they had both come out the same week in June. Danny put the phone in her pocket. "Where's Reggie?" she said. "Pets." "You sure?" I had not been sure. I had not heard Reggie come up from Pets, and Reggie had been told to stay in Pets. But Reggie was Reggie, and Reggie did not always do what he was told. I went to the phone. I dialed 2 numbers. The phone rang back in the pet aisle. The pet aisle phone was on the wall by the registers in the rear. The dog food section registers. The ones that customers thought were the price checkers, but were actually intercom lines. It rang 8 times. I hung up. I dialed 2 different numbers. The all-call clicked over the speakers. "Reggie, pick up line 2, I said into the receiver. My voice came out of the overhead speakers and went up into the ceiling and bounced around the store. It sounded the way my voice always sounded over the speakers, which was a voice slightly higher than mine, which was the thing the speakers did to everybody. I let go of the all-call button. I waited. The phone did not ring. "Reggie," I said into the receiver again. "Pick up the nearest phone." Nothing. I hung up. I looked at Danny. She had taken her phone back out of her pocket and was tapping at it. She was texting somebody. She was probably texting Reggie. Reggie carried his phone in his back pocket against store policy, because he did not have anybody he could leave at home worrying about him except his grandmother. And his grandmother was the somebody he worried about, and so the phone stayed on him. Danny waited. The phone did not ding. "He's not answering my text either," she said. "Marlin," I said. Marlin opened his eyes. He looked at me. "Reggie's not picking up," I said. Marlin stood. He stood without using his hands. His hands were still shaking, and he was holding them in front of him now, palms down, the way somebody might steady themselves at the edge of a pool. He stopped shaking by the time he was upright. He had made his hands stop. I had not seen anybody do that on purpose before. "I'll go," Marlin said. "I'll go," I said. Marlin looked at me a long second. "Both," Danny said. "Both of you. Go now. I'll wait for Lena at the door." We went. We went down the main aisle toward the rear of the store. Marlin walked beside me. He walked the way he had walked away from the dock, which was the slow, careful way, and I matched him because there did not seem to be any reason to walk faster. The store at 2 in the morning was empty in the way it had been empty earlier in the shift, but the empty was a different empty now. It was empty in the way an aquarium was empty, when the lights had been on for too long after closing and the staff had all gone home. There was nobody to be there. There was no reason for the lights to be on. The fluorescents were still doing their job, lighting the aisles down their long, colorful runs of plastic packaging, and nothing was using any of it. The end caps had their displays out for the seasonal promotion, which was back to school, and the school supplies sat in their wire bins with their bright yellow signs declaring various savings, and there were no children, and there were no parents, and the lights kept on. We passed the cleaning aisle. The cleaning aisle was where the bleach was. The bleach was on the bottom 3 shelves, the gallon jugs with the white caps, and I had stocked that aisle yesterday and I knew what was supposed to be there. There was a face of Clorox bleach missing in the second row, halfway down the aisle, just one. The 2,000 fluid ounce jugs were stacked 4 deep, and the front of one stack was gone, and the gallons behind it had not been pulled forward to fill the gap. I did not say anything to Marlon. I looked at the gap. The gap was the size of one jug. We kept walking. We passed the toy aisle. The toy aisle was where the bicycles were locked in the back wire enclosure and where the cheaper plastic toys were on pegs. There was nothing wrong with the toy aisle. I looked at it anyway. I looked at the toy aisle the way I would have looked at any aisle that night, which was with the assumption that something might be wrong with it. We passed the lawn and garden section, which was technically outside the store proper because it spilled out into the seasonal area, and we passed the automotive section, which had the smell of new tires and which had not had a customer in 8 hours. We came up on pets. The pet aisle was long. The pet aisle ran from the rear of the store almost to the sidewall, and it had 2 phases, the dry food phase at the front and the wet food phase at the back. And the back phase was where Reggie had been doing his recovery because that was where the cans had been disturbed by an earlier shopper with a small child. The pet aisle was empty. Reggie was not in the dry food. Reggie was not in the wet food. Reggie was not in either of the phases. The cans of wet food that Reggie had been refacing were sitting in a stack on the floor, 4 of them, with the labels turned the way Reggie had been turning them, which was a way I had taught him during his first week, all the cans facing the same direction with the rim seams aligned. Reggie had been there. Reggie was no longer there. His phone was on the floor. It was lying screen down beside the stack of 4 cans. The screen down side of a phone usually meant a person had set the phone down deliberately so the screen would not light up, but Reggie's phone had a clear case and the screen lit up anyway when a text came in, and the screen was lit up now, faintly, through the back, with a notification. I picked the phone up. I turned it over. The notification was from Danny. The text said, "Cole calling for you, answer phone, you idiot." Marlon was looking at the floor on the other side of the cans. "Cole," he said. I went around to where he was looking. There was a smear on the floor. The smear was not large. It was about 4 inches long, the rough shape of a coyote track, but it was not a track. It was a mark, like somebody had wiped something dry against the polished concrete. The mark was dark. The mark looked black under the fluorescence, but it was probably brown. I knew the smell before I knew the color. Creosote. Same as Marlon had smelled when he came back through the swinging doors. Stronger, here, close to the floor. The smell was concentrated. The smell was the smell of a railroad tie that had spent a summer in the sun. It was here at the back of the pet aisle in the middle of a Walmart supercenter at 2:35 on a Tuesday morning in August, on a floor that had been mopped at 11, in a section where no creosote-treated wood had been used since the store was built. I crouched down. I did not touch the smear. "He came through here," I said. "Yeah, and he took Reggie." Marlon did not answer that one right away. "He went through here," Marlon said. "I don't know if he took Reggie or if Reggie ran." Where would Reggie run? Out the back of the store, through the lawn and garden gate, through the swinging doors, out the dock. Through the dock? The dock was open, Marlon said. I left it open. Why did you leave it open? He did not answer that either. I stood up. The smell of creosote was already fading from my nose, the way that smell did to a man who had been around it for a few seconds and whose receptors had given up. I knew it had not fainted from the air. I knew my nose had just stopped registering it. Reggie, I said, not loud, just into the air. He's not here, Marlon said. Reggie. Cole. What? He's not here. I took a step back from the stack of cans. I looked down at Reggie's phone in my hand. The lock screen had gone dark again. The phone was warm. The phone had been against Reggie's body very recently. Reggie had been carrying it in the back pocket of his jeans the way he always carried it, and when he had set it on the floor or when it had been knocked out of his pocket, the phone had still had the warmth of his body on it. The warmth was already going. I could feel it cooling in my hand. Marlon, I said. Yeah, what was that in the lot? Marlon looked at me. He looked at me the way he had looked at me at the dock when he had said yeah to the question I had not asked, which was a way of looking that I now understood was the way a person looked at another person when they were going to be telling a long thing they had been meaning to tell. He did not get to tell it. The intercom clicked on overhead. The click of the intercom in a Walmart was a particular sound. It was a click and then a short hiss of dead air and then somebody's voice. It was the click of a button being held down somewhere in the building. The click was meaningful because the click only happened when somebody was about to talk. The click did not happen on its own. The click happened. Then the dead air hissed. Then a voice said, Cole Patterson, please come to aisle 13. Cole Patterson to aisle 13. The voice was not Danny's voice. The voice was not Marlon's voice, and it was not Reggie's voice, and it was not my voice, and there was nobody else in the store who could press the intercom button. The voice was a voice I had not heard since 2014. The voice was my father's. I had not heard my father's voice since the afternoon of the 17th of April in 2014. He had said something to me at breakfast that morning before he left for the shop, and what he had said had been ordinary, something about needing me to take the trash to the curb because Tuesday was a pickup day. He had said it standing at the kitchen counter with his back to me, pouring coffee into a thermos. He had been gone for 9 hours when the call had come. The voice on the intercom was his voice. The voice on the intercom said it again. Cole Patterson, please come to aisle 13. Marlon was watching me. He was watching me with no expression on his face because there was no expression that fit. He did not know whose voice that was. He could not have known. He had not known my father. I said the only thing I could think of to say. I said, that's my dad's voice. Marlon did not say anything. I said, my dad has been dead 12 years. He nodded. He had already known that. He had known it the way he knew most things about me, which was by some quiet accumulation that did not require asking. He had heard it from Danny at some point, probably, or from Hector, the day porter, or from one of the other lifers who had been at the store long enough to know everybody's funerals. He did not nod again. He just watched me. He never came to the store, I said. What? My dad. He never came to this store. The store opened in 1998. He died in 2014. He came here 100 times, but his voice has never been on this intercom. No, Marlon said. That voice is not on a recording in this building. No, there is no way that voice is on this intercom. No, I held Reggie's phone in my hand. I had been holding it the whole time. I held it harder. The plastic case creaked a little under my fingers, and I noticed I was crushing it, and I made my hand let go a little. Cole Patterson, please come to aisle 13, the voice said again. It was patient. It was the patient version of my father's voice that I remembered, the voice he used when I was a kid and I had forgotten to do something he had asked me to do. The voice he used when he was waiting for me to figure out what I was supposed to be doing. He had been a patient man. He had not yelled. He had asked, and then he had asked again, and then he had asked a third time, and after the third time he had walked over and done it himself. The voice was on the third ask now. I'm going to aisle 13, I said. No, you're not, Marlon said. Marlon, you are not going to aisle 13, Cole. Reggie's gone. Reggie's not in aisle 13. How do you know? Because whatever just said your name in your father's voice is in aisle 13, and Reggie is in some other place, and you going to aisle 13 is not going to bring Reggie back. What's in aisle 13? He did not answer. Marlon, what's in aisle 13? What's in aisle 13 is the thing you saw in the lot. You saw it too. I saw what you saw. What was it? Marlon looked at the floor. He looked at the smear on the floor next to the stack of 4 cans. He looked at it the way a man looked at something he had been hoping not to have to look at for a long time, and then he said, I told myself I was not going to do this with anybody. I told myself I was going to take this with me. I didn't expect somebody else to start seeing it. Marlon, there's no good word for what you saw. Use a bad one. He looked at me. He looked at me for what felt like a long second. Skinwalker, he said. The word landed, and I felt it land. I had heard the word before. I had heard it from my Uncle Ray when I was 8, and Ray had been drinking. I had heard it on a road trip with my father, when my father had pointed out the road into the reservation up north and told me certain things were not jokes. I had heard it on the radio late at night, driving home from Gallup, when a man on the amplitude modulation band had been talking about it in the slow, even way. Men on the amplitude modulation band talked about things they had decided to believe in. The word had been part of the furniture of the country I grew up in. It had not been a word I had used in any sentence I had said out loud as an adult. It had not been a word I would have used now. That word is not your word, I said. I do not know why I said it. The words came out before I thought about them. They came out maybe because Marlon was Mexican-American and not Dene, and the country we were standing in had a 100-mile reach into Dene land, and the word was somebody else's word that we did not have a right to. You're right, Marlon said. It's not my word. It's the only word I have. You've been seeing them. I've been seeing them since the 80s, he said. I've been driving truck through the country they live in since the 80s. I have not said this to a person in 41 years. I am saying it to you now because Lena is not going to believe you when you tell her, and if I do not say it with you, you will not say it yourself, and you need to say it. What's in aisle 13, Marlon? One of them, wearing my father, wearing a piece of him. I thought about that. I thought about what it meant for something to wear a piece of a man who had been dead 12 years. I did not let myself think about it past that 1 second. I shut the thought off the way I had been shutting other thoughts off lately, the porch light, the print in the dust, the dog refusing to walk past the fencing. I had a lifetime's practice at shutting thoughts off. Cole Patterson, please come to aisle 13, the voice said. Lena, I said. Is Lena here? Lena is not here. What time? It is 2:38. She said 2:41. Then she has 3 more minutes. I stood in the pet aisle next to a stack of 4 cans of cat food and a smear of creosote on the concrete, and I held Reggie's phone in my hand, and Marlon Vega stood next to me, and we waited for Lena Boyd to get to the store. The intercom did not say my name a 4th time. The store made the small sounds it always made. The fluorescents hummed. The cooler at the end of the aisle ticked over from one cycle to the next, the compressor kicking on with a small thunk and then leveling out into its usual whir. The music played its low Tuesday night volume, and what was playing was a song I knew, an old song, something my father had played in his truck. I could not place it. I knew it without placing it. It was a country song. It was somebody from before I was born. Marlon looked at me. You hear that song? I said. What song? The one playing. He listened. The store had piped music going through it constantly. He was used to it. He tuned it out. He listened now. Yeah, he said. It's a song my dad played. What song? I don't know what song. He listened a little longer. Don't think too hard about it, he said. Lena's pulling in. He could hear Lena's cruiser before he could see it. I could not hear it. He had been listening for cars and lots his whole adult life, the way a truck driver listened, and Marlon could hear an engine from farther away than I could. He nodded toward the front of the store. We started walking. We walked back up the main aisle, the way we had come down it. We did not stop in the pet aisle to do anything about Reggie's phone or about the smear on the floor. I put Reggie's phone in my pocket. The bleach aisle was the same as it had been. The face of Clorox was still missing from the second row. I noticed it again on the way past, the same way I'd noticed it on the way down, and I noticed something else this time, which was that the missing jug had been the one in the front position with the price sticker on it, the one that a customer would have grabbed for if a customer had grabbed for one. The jugs behind it still had price stickers. Nobody had walked in and grabbed a jug of Clorox between yesterday's stocking and this moment. There had not been a customer who had checked out with a jug of Clorox tonight or last night. The jug had not been bought. It had been taken. I did not say anything to Marlon. He had not noticed. Or if he had noticed, he had not mentioned it. Danny saw us coming up the main aisle from her position by the door. She had pulled the security gate halfway across the entrance, the metal lattice that nobody ever closed at night because the sliding doors did the job, and she had it stopped halfway across so that there was a person-sized gap on the left. She was holding her phone up so the screen was facing the door. "Reggie?" she said. "He's gone," I said. She looked at me. The pen cap was no longer in her mouth. The pen cap was clipped to the V of her shirt collar, where she had stuck it when she had moved to the door. "Gone where?" "Gone." She did not ask again. Outside the door, on the lot, Lena's cruiser was pulling up to the front entrance. The cruiser was a white Tahoe with the Navajo County Sheriff decal on the side, and the light bar was off and the headlights were on. Lena did not run the lights when she was responding to something that wasn't an active call. She had told me once that the lights drew people, and drawing people was usually the opposite of what she wanted. The cruiser stopped in the fire lane. Lena got out. She had been a tall girl in high school, and she was a tall woman now. She had her hair in the small bun she wore for shift, dark blonde, a few inches of it pulled tight against the back of her head. She was wearing the standard duty uniform, the green pants and the tan shirt, the duty belt with everything on it. She had her travel mug in her left hand. She closed the cruiser door with her hip. She came in through the gap in the gate. She looked at Danny. She looked at Marlon. She looked at me. "Cole," she said. "Lena, tell me." I told her. I told her the way I had been told things by Lena over the years, which was clean and in order, with the small details first and the larger ones building on top. I told her about Marlon and me on the dock. I told her about the truck and the man and the shadow. I told her about the man coming in and asking for the knife without putting one on the belt. I told her about the change in the shirt pocket and about the man saying my name when my tag was clipped behind my belt. I told her about the cameras, which was what Danny had told me and not what I had seen, and Danny jumped in at that point and told it her way and then nodded for me to keep going. I told her about Marlon going outside and coming back smelling like creosote. I told her about Reggie being gone, and about the smear and pet aisle, and about the intercom, and about the voice on the intercom. I left out whose voice it was. I left that out because I did not yet know what I was going to do with it. I left it out because Lena was a deputy, and Lena needed facts to put in a notebook, and a fact that said the intercom said my name in my dead father's voice was not a fact she could write down. "What did the voice on the intercom say?" she said. "Cole Patterson to aisle 13. How many times?" "3. Any other voice?" "No." "Did the voice sound like anybody?" I looked at her. She had asked it because she had to ask it. She was reading me. She had read me for a living for a decade, and she had read me for fun before that, when we had been kids. And she knew my face the way she knew her own travel mug. "It sounded familiar," I said. "Familiar how?" "Familiar, like a relative." "Cole, Lena," she breathed out. "All right," she said. "Show me aisle 13. The 4 of us. Stay together. Don't touch anything. Marlon, you behind me. Danny, you behind Cole. Cole, you point the way." "You don't want to go to aisle 13, Lena," Marlon said. "I don't want a lot of things, Marlon. I'm going to aisle 13. "Lena, what?" He looked at her for a long second. He looked at her the way he had looked at me in the pet aisle when he had said the word. "Skinwalker," he said. The word landed differently in her face than it had in mine. It landed in her face the way a small, heavy object landed on a piece of glass, with a pause in the moment of contact, before either thing broke or did not. She kept her face the same. I heard you, Marlin, she said. You don't believe me. I'm not done forming an opinion yet. You ever take a call out near the rail bed? Marlin. You ever take a call out near the rail bed in the last 5 years? I take a lot of calls. You ever take a call out near the rail bed where somebody was missing and you found their truck and you didn't find them? She did not answer. I'm asking you because I know you have, Marlin said. I'm asking you because there are 17 of them in your missing person file, and most of them have one thing in common. And the one thing they have in common is that they were last seen in or near the corridor that runs along the old Santa Fe alignment. How do you know it's 17, Marlin? Because I've been counting. She looked at him. She looked at him a long time. Then she looked at me. All right, she said. Take me to aisle 13. We walked. Lena was in front. I was beside her. Marlin was behind me on my right shoulder. Danny was behind me on my left. Lena had not drawn her weapon. Her right hand rested on the grip of it without unsnapping the retention strap. Her left hand was holding her travel mug. She had not put the mug down. I do not think she remembered she had it. Aisle 13 at the Drywell Supercenter was the candle aisle. It was halfway down the home section, between the bath stuff and the seasonal end caps. There were no power tools in aisle 13, and there were no firearms in aisle 13, and there were no things in aisle 13 with which a man could obviously do harm. There were candles. There were 3 full racks of candles. There were tall jar candles and pillar candles and votives and tea lights, and the candles ran the length of the aisle on both sides, and the candles were arranged by scent. I had stocked aisle 13 on Monday morning before I had gone home. I had stocked it in the order the planogram told me to stock it, with the fall scents at the front because the seasonal turn was on, and the cinnamon scents and the apple scents and the pumpkin scents had all been pulled forward and faced out. The aisle had smelled like a corporate idea of October when I had walked out of it on Monday. The aisle did not smell like that now. I knew it before we turned into it. I smelled it from the main aisle. It came up around the end cap as we came up to the end cap, and Lena lifted her chin a little and breathed in, and then she shifted her weight in a way that I noticed, because she was a person who did not usually shift her weight when she walked. What aisle 13 smelled like was a thing I had a hard time naming. It smelled like skin, like the inside of a winter coat that had been left in a car all summer. It smelled like the air that came up out of a freezer chest that had been unplugged for a week. It smelled like sweat that was old. It smelled like wet pennies. Under all of that, it smelled like creosote, the same smell Marlin had been wearing when he had come back through the swinging doors. Lena did not say anything about the smell. She turned into aisle 13. I turned in after her. The aisle was empty. The candles were where they had been on Monday morning. The fall scents were pulled forward. The cinnamon candles and the apple candles and the pumpkin candles were faced out. The pricing tags were upright in their pricing channels. The aisle was clean. The aisle was empty of any person, except at the far end of the aisle, where it met the back wall, where the planogram for the end cap was supposed to hold the seasonal display for the next 2 weeks before the Halloween turn. Somebody had set down a single object on the polished concrete. The object was a tall jar candle. It was lit. The flame was steady. The wick had a hard yellow point and a small blue base, and the wax around it had melted down evenly into a small pool that had not yet poured over. The candle had been lit a long time. The pool of wax was deeper than a candle lit 5 minutes earlier would have been. The candle's label faced us. The label was a Drywell's Walmart Supercenter price tag. The price tag was for a different product entirely. The price tag was for a $47.96 buck hunting knife. There was no knife on the concrete by the candle. There was only the candle. Lena had her weapon out by the time I registered any of this. I had not seen her draw it. She had drawn it on the way down the aisle, in the time I had spent looking at the candle, and now she was standing with the pistol up at her ear, in the way she had been trained at the academy and the way she had refined in Iraq. Her travel mug was on a shelf to her left, set down with care between 2 votives. Marlin, she said. Behind. Watch behind. Marlin turned. Marlin's hands had stopped shaking sometime in the last few minutes. He was standing the way he had stood when the man had come into the store, the loose, easy way, the weight forward. Cole, Lena said. Eyes on the candle. Tell me if it changes. Okay. Danny, are you armed? Truck console, Danny said. How far? 40 yards. That's too far. Stay behind me. Cole, the candle. I looked at the candle. The flame did not move. The aisle was indoors. The aisle was sealed against the outside air by the front doors and the back doors, and there was no wind in aisle 13, and the climate control system was running on its low overnight cycle, which moved enough air to keep the temperature even, but not enough to shift a candle flame. The candle flame did not shift, but the wick was not quite straight. The wick was tilted the smallest fraction of a degree to the south. South was the front of the store. South was where we had come from. South was where the front doors were. The wick was leaning toward the front of the store. I looked at the wick for a long second. I felt something I had not felt in a long time, which was the specific bodily feeling of a fact arriving before I had the words for the fact. It was a feeling in the back of my neck and behind my eyes, the kind of feeling I had as a kid the moment before I understood something my father had been trying to tell me. The fact arrived. It's behind us, I said. What? Lena said. It's behind us. Whatever lit this. It's at the front of the store. Lena did not turn. She kept her weapon up and her body angled toward the candle at the back of the aisle, because she had been trained not to take her eyes off a presented threat to address a verbal report from a civilian. But she said, Marlin. Marlin was already turning. Marlin had been watching behind us the whole time anyway. He was facing the front of the store, looking down the long main aisle toward the customer service counter and the front doors. Marlin, Lena said. Yeah, talk to me. Doors are open, Marlin said. The doors at the front of the store did not open by themselves at 2 a.m. The doors operated on motion sensors during the day and on a deliberate switch at night. And the deliberate switch was an override that Danny had to flip from behind the customer service counter. The doors had been on the override since 10 when Danny had come on shift. The override had not been flipped. Marlin, you locked the override, Danny said. I locked it when we walked back to Pets. And the doors are open. And the doors are open. I turned. Even though Lena had told me to watch the candle. The candle was not going anywhere, and the thing that mattered was not in aisle 13. The sliding doors at the front of the store were open, both of them, slid all the way back into their pockets. The motion sensor laid above the doors was a small red dot, which meant the doors had not been triggered by motion. They had been opened by the override being flipped. In the open doorway, framed by the dark of the lot beyond, stood Reggie Tate. He was looking at me. He was about 30 feet from where I was standing, at the front of the store, in the gap between the doors. He had his hands at his sides. He had on the same dark green vest he had been wearing at the start of the shift. His name tag was where it should be, on the left side of the vest. His face was the color his face usually was. He was not bleeding. He was not crying. He was not holding anything. He was looking at me. He did not blink. Reggie, Danny said. He did not move. Reggie, honey, come on inside. Just walk on in. Reggie did not walk on in. I looked at his shadow. The fluorescence above the front entrance threw his shadow forward into the store, onto the polished concrete of the entry mat, the long pale shape of him stretching back from his boots and pointing right at me. His shadow did not match his body. The shadow's head was a few inches too far back. The shadow's shoulders were a half-inch too narrow on the right and a half-inch too wide on the left. The shadow's right arm hung longer than Reggie's right arm. The shadow was not Reggie's. Cole, Marlin said, quietly. I see it. Lena. I am tracking it, Lena said. Marlin, get Danny behind the customer service counter. Cole, stay with the candle. The candle isn't doing anything. Stay with it anyway. Marlin moved. He moved Danny back away from the front of the store, with a hand on her shoulder, walking her sideways out of the line of fire, easing her behind the customer service counter where the half wall would give her something to be behind. He did it in the way he had stood next to the man at register 4, which was without seeming to do anything at all. Lena had pivoted. She had pivoted her body without taking her weapon off the candle, and now her weapon was on Reggie. She held it on him steady. She did not yell at him. "Reggie," she said, calmly. "Reggie, son, I need you to walk forward into the store, all the way to the customer service counter, step at a time, easy." Reggie did not walk forward. His mouth opened. He spoke. "Call Patterson. Please come to aisle 13, he said. His voice was not his voice. His voice was my father's. I had not heard my father's voice in 12 years and 4 months, and I had heard it twice in 5 minutes. The thing standing in the doorway wearing Reggie's face spoke with my father's mouth. The pitch was right. The pacing was right. The small low burr at the end of certain words, the one my father had carried from his own father, was right. It was the burr that had told me 1,000 times when I was a kid that my dad was the one talking and not somebody on the radio doing a country impression. It was a specific sound, and it belonged to one person, and that person was dead. "Call Patterson," the thing said again. "Please come to aisle 13. Lena's weapon was steady on it. She did not pull the trigger. She had a procedural reason for not pulling the trigger, which was that the thing in the doorway looked like a Walmart employee in good standing and looked like a person. And a deputy did not shoot a person standing in a doorway who had not raised a weapon. She had a personal reason for not pulling the trigger, which was that she was watching the wrong shadow on the polished concrete and watching the shape of Reggie's body that did not quite match the shape inside the body. And she was a careful person, and she was processing. "Reggie," she said. The thing wearing Reggie did not respond to its name. "Reggie," she said again. "If you can hear me, blink twice." The thing wearing Reggie did not blink. "Reggie." It did not move. It opened its mouth a third time. I did not want to hear my father's voice a third time. I did not know if I could take it. I had spent a long time getting that voice out of the rooms I lived in, the way a man got the smell of an animal out of a house after the animal had died, and I had gotten it most of the way out. And the prospect of standing in the front of a Walmart at almost 3 in the morning and listening to my father say my name through a coworker's face was not a prospect my body wanted to accommodate. My body did something on its own. My body said, "Don't." The word came out of me low and rough. I did not raise my voice. I did not yell. I said the one word the way a tired man said it. The thing in the doorway closed its mouth. It looked at me. It looked at me for about 3 seconds. Then it turned around. It turned around in the doorway with Reggie's body, with Reggie's narrow shoulders and Reggie's pigeon-toed walk, and it stepped out through the open doors onto the front mat, and it kept walking, away from the store, into the lot. The doors did not slide closed behind it. It walked across the lot at a regular human pace. It did not look back. It walked through the pool of light under the closest pole, and then through the gap between 2 poles, and then through the next pool of light and the next gap. The shadow under each pole did not match the body. Under the first pole, the shadow's head trailed a few inches behind. Under the second pole, the shadow's right arm hung long. By the third pole, the shadow looked nothing like Reggie at all. By the third pole, the shadow was a longer thing, a thing taller than the body that was casting it, with what might have been antlers, but were probably nothing. It walked all the way out across the empty lot. It did not get into the white F-250, because the white F-250 was gone. It walked through the gap between the cart corral and the dumpster fence, and it kept walking, and it walked out onto the Interstate 40 frontage, and it turned right onto the shoulder, and it kept walking. And in the dark, beyond the lot lights, it disappeared. Lena held her weapon up the whole time. She did not lower it until the thing was past the gap in the cart corral. Then she let her arms come down slow, and she let the muzzle drift down to the polished concrete in front of her boots, and she did not holster the weapon yet. "Marlon," she said. "Yeah." "Anybody in the lot?" "Lot's clear." "You're sure?" "Lot's clear, Lena." "Danny?" "Yeah," Danny said. She was still behind the customer service counter. Her voice was steady. Her voice was steadier than mine would have been if I had tried to say my own name at that moment. "Danny, lock the override." Danny came out from behind the counter. She walked to the front of the store at a brisk pace, not running, not strolling. She went to the small box mounted next to the doors, and she flipped the override back on. The doors hesitated and then slid shut. The motion sensor light above them clicked from red to green. The doors made the small chime they made when they locked. Locked, Danny said. Marlin, Lena said. Yeah. Where's the real Reggie? Don't know. We need to find him. Yeah. Cole. Yeah. You okay? I had not thought about whether I was okay. I had been standing at the back of aisle 13 with my hand resting on a candle shelf, which I had not realized I was resting it on, and the candle that the thing had lit was still burning at the far end of the aisle, and the wax pool was still spreading. The wick was no longer tilted south. The wick was straight up. Yeah, I said. Come up here. I walked up the aisle. I had to walk past the lit candle to get out of the aisle. I did not look at it as I walked past it. I felt the heat of the flame on my left calf as I went by. The flame was a small, ordinary thing. The flame was just a candle, the way a candle was just a candle, and what had lit it had walked out the doors and onto the frontage road, and the candle did not have to be anything other than a candle now. I made the turn out of aisle 13, and I came up the main aisle to where Lena and Danny and Marlin were standing by the customer service counter. Lena was holstering her weapon. The motion she used to do that was slow and deliberate. She was forcing her hand to do it carefully because she did not yet trust her hand. All right, she said. She said it to the three of us. All right. We are going to find Reggie. We are going to do it together. Marlin, you and Cole sweep the back. Danny and I sweep the front. Stay in pairs. Stay in radio contact. Marlin, do you have a radio? No. Phone? Yes. Number. He told her his number. She entered it into her phone with her thumb without looking at the phone. She had a way of typing on her phone without looking at it that I had seen older deputies do at the diner. Cole, give me your phone. I gave her my phone. She added her number to it. She handed it back. Danny's phone is the third leg. Three-way text. If anybody finds him, text the thread. If anybody sees anything else, text the thread. Do not yell. Do not run. Walk. Yeah, Marlin said. If you find the candle anywhere else, do not touch it. Do not blow it out. Text the thread. Yeah. If you find him and he is not breathing, do cardiopulmonary resuscitation and text the thread. Yeah. If you find him and he is breathing but not responsive, do not move him. Text the thread. Yeah. She looked at me. Cole. Yeah. If you find anything that is not him, you back away from it and you call my phone. Yeah. My phone, not the thread. Yeah. Go. We went. Marlin and I took the back of the store. We started at the rear of the food aisles and worked outward in a methodical pattern, the way Marlin walked the aisles when he was doing zone recovery, which was a left-to-right sweep, with the eye line moving up and down each shelf. Marlin did not skip any aisle. He did not say anything for a long time. We worked our way through grocery and then through dairy and then through frozen. The frozen aisle was the coldest part of the store. The coolers ran their compressors in a low chorus along the run, and the doors were glass, and the doors were fogged in places where the seals had gone weak. The lights inside the cases came on as we walked past them, the way they were programmed to do for customers, lighting up one case at a time as our motion crossed the sensor. Each case lit up showed its run of pizza boxes, or frozen vegetables, or ice cream pints, and then went dark again behind us as the sensor lost us. In the case at the south end of the frozen aisle, the case for the half-gallon ice creams, somebody had stacked 4 pints of vanilla on top of each other. The pints had not been there yesterday. Pints did not stack themselves. Pints could not be stacked at 4 high because the case was only tall enough for 2. Somebody had stacked them anyway, 4 pints, one on top of the other, with the lids facing forward, and a column that was taller than the case was meant to hold. I texted the thread. Frozen aisle south, 4 pints stacked vertical in vanilla case. Lena texted back in about 10 seconds. Photograph it. Do not touch. Continue sweep. I took the picture. The phone flash bounced off the glass door and washed the whole image white. I turned off the flash and took the picture again. The image came out clear, the pints stacked the way they were. I sent the picture to the thread. Lena did not reply. Marlon and I kept going. We came through frozen and into produce. Produce had the empty wooden crates and the misters running at low pressure on a timer. Produce had nothing wrong with it. We went past the bakery, which was dark, and past the deli, which was dark, and we came around to the meat section. The meat section had the smell of meat. It had the smell that any meat section had after the doors had been closed all night and the air had been undisturbed for hours. The smell was not strong. It was the small ambient smell of refrigerated protein behind glass. The smell was different at the south end of the meat case. It was stronger there. It was the smell of meat and the smell of something else. The smell of something else was the smell I had smelled in aisle 13, the smell that the candle had been throwing, the smell of skin in a winter coat in a hot car. The smell was thicker by the meat case. I looked at Marlon. Marlon was already looking at the case. The meat case at the south end was the case that held the family packs of beef, the large flat trays of ground chuck and chuck steaks, and the occasional brisket. The case had been faced yesterday by somebody on the day shift, and the trays were arranged the way they were supposed to be arranged, with the freshest in the back and the oldest in the front. The trays in the front had their sell-by stickers facing the glass. The stickers had today's date on them. They were today's old. In the back of the case, behind the freshest of the family packs, somebody had laid down something that was not from the meat case. It was a long, flat thing, about the size of a forearm. It was wrapped in white paper, the kind of butcher paper the meat counter used during the day for cut to order. It was tied with a piece of red and white striped twine. There was no meat counter at the Drywell store. The meat counter had been discontinued in 2019. The white paper and the red twine were not available at the store. The white paper was not stocked at the Drywell store. The red twine was not stocked at the Drywell store. Both of them had been somewhere else, and somebody had brought them here. The paper had writing on it. The writing was on the side of the package facing the glass. The writing was in pencil. The writing said, in clear, careful block letters that any cashier at any meat counter might have written, my name. I texted the thread. Meat, case, south end, wrapped package, with my name on it. Lena texted back, photograph it. Do not touch. Continue. Sweep. I took the picture. Marlon and I looked at each other through the reflection of the case glass. Lena's not letting us touch anything until she's looked at it herself, I said. Yeah, we're going to find him. Yeah, we're going to find him alive. Marlon looked at me. He did not answer that one. We continued the sweep. We did the dairy aisle, and the bread aisle, and the chip aisle, and the soda aisle. We did not find Reggie in any of them. We did not find any more wrong things in any of them. The aisles were the aisles. The lights were the lights. The store at the southern end of grocery felt like the store always felt, which was empty and held its breath and waited for morning. We came out of grocery and into the back stockroom door, the one with the metal kick plate at the bottom and the small wire glass window at the top. Marlon held the door for me. We went through. The stockroom corridor ran the length of the back wall of the store and connected the receiving area to the various stockrooms attached to the major sections. The stockroom corridor had no music. The stockroom corridor had concrete floors and exposed metal trusses overhead and a row of dusty fluorescents. The corridor ran about 140 feet end to end. Halfway down the corridor, against the wall outside the pet stockroom door, somebody had set Reggie down. He was sitting up. He was leaned against the cinder block. His head was tipped to one side, the way a person leaned when they had fallen asleep on a bus. His eyes were closed. He was breathing. He was breathing slow and even. He had a small cut on his forehead just above his right eyebrow, about half an inch long, and the cut was no longer bleeding. The blood that had come out of the cut had run down the side of his face and dried in a thin line and clotted in the small hairs of his sideburn. His phone was not in his pocket. His phone was in my pocket. I felt the weight of it through my jeans. I texted the thread, found him, stockroom corridor, outside pet door, breathing, unconscious, small forehead cut. Lena texted back, "Do not move him. Coming." I crouched down next to Reggie. Marlon crouched on the other side. We did not touch him. I held my hand under his nose. I felt his breath. The breath was warm and steady. He was alive. He was a regular kind of alive, the kind where a person was unconscious but okay, the kind where they were going to wake up. "Reg," I said. "Quiet." He did not respond. "Reg, buddy." Marlon held a finger up. He pointed at the floor next to Reggie's boot. On the polished concrete, beside Reggie's right boot, was a smear of the same dark color I had seen in the pet aisle. It was the same shape. It was a thin curved line, maybe 4 inches long, like the bottom edge of a foot that did not have any flesh on it had been planted there. The smear smelled the same way the pet aisle smear had smelled. The smear was the only thing on the floor next to Reggie. There were no other footprints. There were no other smears. Whatever had set Reggie down had stepped here and had not stepped anywhere else, and had then walked out of the stockroom corridor without leaving another trace. Lena came in through the door at the receiving end of the corridor with Danny behind her. They came at a fast walk. Lena got to where we were crouched, and she went down on one knee next to Reggie, and she did the thing she had been trained to do, which was check his pulse at the side of his neck and listen for his breath, and check his pupils with her flashlight without moving his head. "Hey, Reg," she said. "Hey, kid." He did not wake up. "He needs an ambulance," Danny said. "Already called dispatch on the way in." They were rolling engine 12 out of the volunteer station. They are about 4 minutes out. 4 minutes. They'll come in the dock. You and Cole get the bay door. Yeah? She looked at us. "Cole, Marlon, you found anything else?" "2 things," I said. "Frozen aisle, meat case, sent pictures. I saw them. What are they?" She did not answer that one. "Lena, what are they?" "I do not know what they are, Cole. There are things he did not have to leave. He left them anyway. They are for you to find." "Then they're a message." "Yeah. What's the message?" "I do not know that either." She stood. She helped me stand. Marlon stood on his own. "Y'all stay with Reggie. I am going to look at the things in the frozen aisle and the meat case while we wait for the ambulance. Do not touch him. Do not move him. Do not move anything around him. If he wakes up, ask him what he remembers, and do not coach him." "Yeah," I said. "Cole." "Yeah." "Did you tell Marlon and Danny whose voice it was on the intercom?" "No." "You should." "Lena, I do not want to." "You should anyway. They are in this with you. You do not get to decide what they know." She turned and walked out of the stockroom corridor toward the front of the store. Her boots were quiet on the concrete because she had bought soft-soled boots when she made deputy and she had not gone back. Danny followed her. The door at the receiving end of the corridor swung shut behind them, and Marlon and I were alone in the corridor with Reggie. We did not say anything for a minute. Then Marlon said, "Whose voice was it?" I told him. Marlon listened, with his head down, his arms folded across his chest, his weight on his right leg. He did not interrupt. He did not nod. He just listened. When I was done, he said, "When did your dad die?" 2014. "How?" "Heart attack. Tire shop floor." "He had a heart attack at the tire shop." "Yeah." "Where was the shop?" "South of town, highway side, half a mile down from where Hollis Wren's trading post is now." Marlon nodded. "What?" "Nothing." "Marlon, what?" He looked at me. He looked at me a long second. "I am going to tell you something. I am going to tell you this once. After I tell you, I am not going to bring it up again. You are going to remember it and decide what to do with it on your own. Okay?" In the 80s, when I was driving, the rail line south of town was still active. Freight ran on it twice a day. I knew a guy who worked the section. He was a guy a few years older than me, out of Clovis, named Eddie Tafoya. He drove a section crew Ford Bronco, painted maroon and white. He died in 1987. Okay. He died at the same shop. He died on the same floor. He had a heart attack at the same time of day. The shop had a different name then. It was Sutter's Tire and Repair, before it was the place your dad worked at. But it was the same lot, the same building. They knocked the old sign down and put a new sign up in 1996, and the building stayed. I looked at him. Marlon, I know. That's a coincidence. Yeah, that has to be a coincidence. Maybe. There are a lot of tire shops on highway sides. There are. And there are a lot of heart attacks at tire shops. There are. That's a coincidence. It might be. He did not say anything else. I crouched back down next to Reggie. I put my hand on the cinder block above his shoulder. I felt the cinder block. The cinder block was cool. The cinder block was the cinder block of an ordinary stockroom wall in an ordinary Walmart in an ordinary high desert town in northeastern Arizona, and somewhere out on the Interstate 40 frontage, a thing was walking that had worn my coworker's face and had used my father's voice, and it had left a candle burning at the back of the candle aisle and 4 pints of vanilla stacked in a freezer case and a paper-wrapped package in a meat case with my name on it. And the cinder block was cool against the palm of my hand. I did not let myself think about Eddie Tafoya. I let myself think about Reggie's breath, which was steady, and about Reggie's pulse, which Lena had counted as 68, and about the fact that Reggie was going to wake up in a few minutes or in a few hours and was going to need somebody to tell him what had happened to him, and the somebody who told him was going to have to know what they were saying. Reggie's eyelids fluttered. I leaned in. Reg, I said. He blinked. He blinked the way a man blinked in bright light. He looked at me. His eyes did not focus. Cole, he said. His voice was his own voice. There was nothing else underneath it. There was no other tone, no rasp, no second pitch. It was just Reggie's voice, slow and slurred the way a person was slurred when they had taken a hit on the head. Yeah, buddy, it's me. Cole, my head hurts. I know. Cole, yeah, where am I? Stockroom, outside Pet. He thought about that. I was in Pet, he said. I know. I was facing cans. I know. I heard a noise. What noise? A voice. I heard somebody saying my name. Whose voice? He thought about that. He thought about it with his eyes half closed and his head tipped to the side and the small clotted line of blood on his temple, and he was working on it the way a person works on a thing through fog. My grandmother, he said. Your grandmother was in Pet. My grandmother's voice was in Pet. Reg, she said my name. She said, come here, mijo. She always said that. She said it the way she always said it. I went to where the voice was. Where was the voice? Down the aisle. The end of the aisle where the dog beds are. Then what? I don't remember. Reg, I don't remember, Cole. I went down the aisle. I went toward the voice. There was nobody there. I turned around to go back to the cans. Then I'm here. You don't remember anything in between? No. I looked at Marlon. Marlon was watching me. Marlon had heard. I looked back at Reggie. Your grandmother is at home, I said. Yeah. Your grandmother is in bed. Yeah. Your grandmother was not in Pet Aisle. Cole. Yeah. My grandmother was not in Pet Aisle. Yeah. He closed his eyes again. He did not pass back out. He just closed his eyes. That voice was not my grandmother, he said. No, that voice was something else doing my grandmother. Yeah. He nodded. The nod was very small. He kept his eyes closed. In the distance, beyond the doors of the stockroom corridor, I could hear the diesel of an ambulance pulling into the lot and turning toward the dock. The dock door was rolling up. The volunteer crew was here. They would come through with the gurney. They would lift Reggie carefully and check him for a spinal injury and roll him out to the ambulance and take him to the hospital in Holbrook, which was the county hospital, and Lena would follow them in her cruiser, and Reggie's grandmother would meet them at the hospital, having been called by Lena before the ambulance arrived. The night would proceed in the way the night proceeded. I took Reggie's phone out of my pocket. I slid it back into the back pocket of his jeans, gentle, where it had been before he had walked toward the voice that was not his grandmother. He did not feel it go in. His grandmother would want to call somebody when she got to Holbrook. The phone needed to be with him for that. I stayed crouched next to Reggie until they came in. I did not let go of the cinder block. The cinder block stayed cool. The ambulance left at 3:02. Lena went with it. She did not say anything to me before she went. She put her hand on my shoulder for a second on her way out the dock, and she squeezed once. The squeeze was the kind of thing she had done when we were kids, when she had babysat my cousins and I had been over there for some birthday, and she had been older and tall and had touched my shoulder the way an older kid touches a younger one. She had not done it since. She did it now, and then she was gone. Danny locked the dock behind them. She did it herself. Marlin stood and watched. Marlin was not doing well. He was not doing well in the way somebody was not doing well when they had been awake too long and had seen too much in one stretch. He had not had a cigarette since the one inside the store, the one he was not supposed to have, and he was past the time he would normally have wanted another. He was not going to go out for it. He was not going back out on that dock until the sun came up. None of us were. We did the next 4 hours. Walmart did not stop because something had walked in and walked back out. The store was open until 7. The day crew came in at 6. Between 3 and 6, the three of us had jobs to do, and we did them. Because there was nothing else to do. Because the floor needed to be ready for the morning customers, and the receipts needed to be reconciled, and the freezer pulls were on a schedule that did not care. We worked. Danny went back to the customer service counter. She pulled the cap off another pen. She sat at the counter with the monitor for the cameras turned so that she could see the front doors from her chair. The override was still locked. The doors were not going to open without her flipping the switch. She watched the door anyway. Marlin went back to the receiving room. He swept the floor of the receiving room, which did not need to be swept. He swept it because sweeping was something to do with his hands. He swept it slow in long passes, and after he was done, he started in on the pallet jacks, wiping them down with a rag that had been hanging from a nail on the wall for as long as I had been at the store. I worked aisle 13. I had to. The candle was still burning at the back of the aisle. Lena had told me before she left to put a sandwich bag over it without touching the candle itself, to preserve the wax for whatever a deputy did to wax in an investigation, and then to blow it out. She had told me to put a sticky note on the shelf where the candle had been taken from, which I would have to find by checking the candle's universal product code against the planogram. She had told me to leave the 4 pints stacked in the freezer case and the package in the meat case alone, because she was coming back at 6 to look at them in better light. The candle had taken about 40 minutes to get down to the size it was at. The pool of wax was a half-inch deep. The wax was a clean wax, the kind a candle would have if it had been burning steady in still air the whole time. I had taken the photo Lena had asked for. I had stretched a sandwich bag over the lit candle, slow, not touching the candle itself, until the bag's opening fit down past the rim of the jar. The bag inflated a little from the heat trapped under it. The flame got smaller. The flame got smaller, and then the flame went out. The candle smoked a little under the bag. The smoke filled the bag, and then the bag deflated as the smoke cooled and the air contracted, and when I lifted the bag away, the wax inside was already starting to skin over. I labeled the candle with a piece of tape and a Sharpie. I wrote the date. I wrote Evidence Boyd. I set the candle on the shelf at the end of the aisle, on the empty space where the seasonal end cap was supposed to go, and I weighted down with a brick that had been holding open the door at the back of the seasonal pickup area for as long as I had worked there. I did the rest of aisle 13. I straightened the candles. I faced them. I checked the planogram on my handheld for the candle the wrong one had come from. The handheld told me the candle was a Better Homes and Gardens jar candle in the scent called Hayride. The space on the shelf where it had been was 3 feet up on the left side of the aisle, halfway down in the seasonal autumn block. The price was $4.94. The candle had been worth $4.94, and somebody had walked off into the store with it and lit it in the back and left it for me to find. I stuck the note on the shelf where it had come from. The note said the same thing the tape on the jar said. I did it the way Lena had told me. I did the next aisle. I worked through the rest of the home section, doing the recovery that Reggie had been supposed to do in pets. I worked through the bath aisle. I worked through the towels. I worked through the kitchenware. I straightened. I faced. I pulled forward. I did it on autopilot the way I did it on a normal night, and the work used parts of my brain that did not have any other use, and the parts of my brain that did have other uses got to rest. That was the trick of the work. The trick of the work was that it asked nothing of you and let you keep moving. I did not go to the freezer aisle to look at the pints. I did not go to the meat case to look at the package. I did not need to look at them. I had taken the pictures. The pictures were on my phone. The pictures were going to be there in the morning, and I was going to be looking at them for the rest of my life, and I did not need a fresh look at 3 in the morning to add to the file. Around 4, Marlon came up from the receiving room and sat on a folding chair he had set up in the front lanes, just outside the customer service counter, where Danny was sitting on her own stool behind the counter. The two of them did not say anything to each other for the longest time. Marlon had taken his reading glasses off the cord and was holding them in his lap. He was looking at the lenses. He was not looking through them at anything. He was just looking at them, the way an old man might look at a small thing he had carried for a long time. I went up to the front. Need anything? I said. No, Danny said. Coffee? There isn't any. There's the gas station. You're not going to the gas station. I'm not. Cole? Yeah. You okay? Yeah. Don't. Don't what? Don't tell me you're okay. Tell me what you actually are. I thought about that. I thought about whether there was an answer to the question. That was not the answer I had given her. I'm scared, I said. Yeah, I'm scared because I do not know what is going to happen when I go home tonight. You can come to my place. Danny. Avery's at my mom's. I have a couch. I have a dog. Bring the dog. Danny. Cole. I have to go home. She looked at me. Why? She said. Because Boone is in the trailer. Then go get him and come back. And then what? And then you sleep at my place tonight and you call Lena in the morning and you figure out the next thing. I thought about it. I thought about it for about 10 seconds. Maybe, I said. Maybe. I'll think about it. She did not push. She knew not to push. She had known not to push at me about anything since high school, when I had been the kid in her social studies class who had not turned in 3 assignments after his father died and who had not wanted to hear about it from anybody including her. And she had passed me her notes without saying anything and let me copy them. She still knew not to push. I went back to the aisles. I worked until 5:30. The sky outside the front doors was not visible from where I was working, but I knew what the sky was doing because I had been working the overnight long enough to feel the time without checking it. The sky was going from black to the first edge of blue. The mesas would have started to come into outline against it. The lot lights would be starting to look weaker against the new ambient light. Marlon was always the one who noticed it first, because he had spent years driving into it. At 5:30, I came out of aisle 19, and Marlon was no longer in the chair at the front. The chair was empty. Danny saw my face and shook her head before I could ask. He's on the dock, she said. He's outside. He's on the dock. He's outside, Danny. The bay door is down. He's between the bay door and the swinging door. He's smoking. He's been there 10 minutes. I went to the swinging doors. I pushed one of them open and looked through. Marlon was sitting on the edge of the dock platform, on the inside of the bay door, with his boots on the concrete and his elbows on his knees. He had a cigarette going. He was smoking it slow. The bay door was down, all the way down, the chain coiled neat against the inside of the metal. He was not looking at the bay door. He was looking at the concrete in front of him. I came in. I let the swinging door close behind me. I went and sat next to him on the platform. He passed me a cigarette without looking. I took it. He lit it for me with his lighter, the same gold Zippo with the worn lacquer that he had carried as long as I had known him, and he flicked it shut and put it back in his shirt pocket. We smoked. The dock was quiet. The dock was as quiet as the rest of the store was quiet, but it was a different quiet because the dock had concrete on 3 sides and a metal door on the 4th, and the sound rolled around the space differently. The receiving room behind us had the soft hum of the conveyor belt motor on its overnight idle. The bay door in front of us did not move. "Marlin," I said. "Yeah." "You went out earlier." "Yeah." "When you came back smelling like creosote." "Yeah." "Where did you go?" He smoked. He smoked the whole cigarette without answering. He smoked it down to the filter, and then he flicked the filter into a coffee can he had been using as an ashtray for as long as I had worked there. He pulled another cigarette out of his soft pack. He lit it. "I went to the rail bed," he said. "You went to the rail bed?" I drove to the rail bed. "In what?" "Took my van. I left the van running. I drove out to the rail bed." "How fast?" "Fast." "Why?" He smoked. "There is a thing I have not done in 41 years," he said. "There is a thing I told myself a long time ago that I was not going to do. I was not going to engage with these people. I was not going to call them out. I was not going to stand on the rail bed and call them out. I was not going to do any of that. I was going to live my life, and they were going to live theirs, and we were going to leave each other alone. Marlin, I went out there tonight to call them out." "Why?" "Because he said your name, Cole. He said your name when his tag was clipped behind your belt. He came in and said the name of a man who has not done a thing to him, and that is a thing they do not do. They have rules. They do not break the rules. They broke a rule tonight, and they broke it on you, and I went out there to ask them what the rule break was for." "You went out and stood on the rail bed and yelled at them." "I did not yell." "Then what did you do?" "I stood on the rail bed, and I said his name. I said the name of the one that runs this country. I said it 3 times. And nothing answered." "Then what?" "Then I drove back. I came in through the dock. My hand started shaking when I got out of the van in the lot." "Why?" "Because saying the name out loud was not free. I did it knowing it was not free. It cost me something. I do not know what it cost me yet. I will know by sunup." "What does that mean?" "It means I am going to find out what I gave them tonight. Maybe nothing. Maybe a lot. I do not know." I looked at him. He was the same man he had been on the dock at 2 o'clock when the truck had pulled in. The long face and the silver hair and the reading glasses on the cord, and he was sitting in a slightly different way now. Slumped a little, his shoulders gone slack, his weight on the heels of his hands. He looked tired. He looked tired the way a man looked tired who had given a lot away and had not yet had time to feel the absence. "What name did you say?" I said. He looked at me. "You don't say their name out loud," he said. "You don't say it where they can hear it. You don't say it on the rail bed. You don't say it in a Walmart supercenter at 5:30 in the morning. You don't say it ever if you can avoid it. I will tell you the name when I have to. When you have to know it. Not now." "Okay." "Cole." "Yeah." "When you go home tonight." "Yeah." "Take Danny up on the couch." "Marlin." "Take her up on it." "Boone is at the trailer." "Get Boone. Take Boone to Danny's." "That's not going to fly with Danny long term." "Long term, Cole, is something we are going to figure out tomorrow. Tonight you do not sleep in that trailer." "Marlin." "Cole." "I know." He nodded. He finished the second cigarette. He flicked the filter into the can. "You hungry?" he said. "No." "Me either." "You should eat anyway." "Yeah." He did not get up. We sat on the dock platform until the day crew started arriving. The first one in was a woman named Ruthie who worked grocery, who came in through the door at the front with her bag over her shoulder. And Danny called the all-call over the intercom to let me and Marlin know Ruthie was in. Marlin stood. He put his hand on the dock and pushed off and stood. He grunted a little. He had not grunted standing up at the start of the shift. He grunted now. "Cole," he said. "Yeah." "You see the package in the meat case?" "Yeah." "You ever wonder what's in it?" "Yeah." "Don't wonder out loud. Don't talk about it. Lena's going to come back. She's going to open it with whoever she opens it with. You and me are going to find out what's in it in the right way." "Yeah." "Don't talk about it. Don't think about it. Don't dream about it." "Yeah." "Go home. Get Boone. Go to Danny's." He walked back through the swinging doors into the store. I sat on the platform for another minute. I finished my cigarette. I flicked the filter into the can. I came in. Lena came back at 6. She came in through the front doors. She had not been to sleep. The skin around her eyes had gone a little hollow, but her uniform was still pressed, and her boots were still clean. She had her travel mug in her hand. The mug was empty. She had drunk it at the hospital and had not had a chance to refill it. She looked at me. She said, "Reggie is going to be all right. They are keeping him overnight for observation. They sutured the cut. The cut was 3 stitches. He is talking in full sentences, and he remembers what I told you he remembered, which is the same as what he told you. His grandmother is with him. He asked for you. I told him you would call him later today. Thanks, Lena. I'm going to take the candle. I'm going to take the package out of the meat case. I'm going to take the pints out of the freezer. I'm going to do it now, and I am going to do it before the day crew is in deep enough to notice. Marlon, you carry the box for me to my cruiser." "Yeah," Marlon said. She looked at me. "Cole, yeah, you are not going home alone." Danny offered the couch. "Take it." "Yeah?" "I am going to come out to your trailer at 5 today. Bring Boone, bring whatever clothes you need for a few days. I will meet you at Danny's at 5. We are going to talk in daylight, the 3 of us. Marlon, you too, if you can be there." "I'll be there," Marlon said. "All right." She walked back to the front of the store with the empty mug in her hand and the look on her face she had at 6 in the morning at the end of a long shift, which was the look of a person who had not yet decided to be tired. Marlon and I went and got a box from the cardboard recycling, and we collected the things Lena needed collected, and we put them in the box, and we walked the box out to her cruiser. Marlon carried it. Lena put it in the back. She did not seal it in an evidence bag because there were no evidence bags large enough for the box. She got in the cruiser. She rolled the window down. 5, she said. "Danny's place. I will see you there." "Yeah." She drove out of the lot. I went back into the store. I clocked out at 7:04, 4 minutes after my scheduled time, which was the kind of overage the system did not flag. Danny clocked out at the same time. Marlon was clocking out at register 4, the same register the man had come into at register 4 6 hours and 2 minutes earlier. He clocked out, and he came out from behind the counter, and he looked at me and Danny, and he said, "Be careful," and he walked out the front doors and across the lot to his van. We watched him go. The day was a high desert dawn. The sky was the pale blue of the early morning, with a few thin clouds at altitude over the mesas, and the sun was a yellow color along the eastern edge of the horizon, and the lot lights had gone off automatically about 10 minutes earlier. Marlon's white van was in the same place it had been all night. He got in. He started the engine. He drove out to the frontage road and turned east, toward town. Danny looked at me. "I'm going home to shower," she said. "I'll text you my address. Come over whenever. I'll be there. The couch is the green one." "Yeah." "Cole." "Yeah." "Drive careful." "Yeah." She walked to her truck. She got in. She drove out the same way Marlon had gone. I stood by my Ranger for a long second. I looked at it, the cracked windshield, the bed liner that was peeling at the corners, the dent in the driver's side door that I had put there backing into a fence post in 2021 and had not fixed. I looked at the lot. I looked at the spot the man's truck had been in. The spot was empty. The lot was empty. The lights were off. The sun was up. I got in my truck. I started it. I drove out of the lot. I turned south on the frontage road toward home. I did not turn east toward Danny's. I did not consciously decide to ignore what Marlon and Lena and Danny had all said. I just did not turn east. I told myself I would, in a minute. I told myself I would get Boone first and then come back. I told myself a lot of things on that drive, in the way I had told myself a lot of things for a long time, and I drove home. I drove home up 2 Mile Road. 2 Mile Road ran south out of Dry Wells along the dry course of what had been called Coldwater Wash before any of us had been born, and what was still called Coldwater Wash on the Bureau of Land Management map, although nobody who lived along it called it anything but the Wash. The road was paved for the first 3 miles out of town, and then the pavement went to chip seal, and then the chip seal went to graded dirt, and then the graded dirt went to whatever the county had not gotten around to grading since the last monsoon. Ray's land was on the right at mile 5. The single wide was set back from the road on a half acre. Ray had cleared in 2015, so I would have a place to land. The drive took 12 minutes if I took it the way I usually took it. It took longer that morning. I took it slow. I took it slow because of the light. The sun was coming up behind me and to my left as I drove south, and the light was the color of new copper. And it laid itself across the country in a way that made the country look unfamiliar, even though I had driven that road 5,000 times. The light caught the tops of the junipers and threw long shadows from them westward across the sage, and the shadows pointed away from me at angles that did not match the angle of any other shadow in the sky. The cottontail rabbits were out in the brush near the road. The cottontails came out at dawn and dusk and ate the small green things the monsoon had brought. They were not afraid of cars. They sat in the brush and watched me pass. A cottontail watched me from the shoulder at the mile 2 mark, sitting up on its haunches the way they did, ears back, eyes wide. I watched it back. It did not move. Its eyes did not blink. As I went past, in the rear view, the cottontail was still in the same position. It did not turn its head. It did not run for cover. It just sat. I had grown up around cottontails. Cottontails ran for cover. Cottontails ran for cover at the sound of a truck door, never mind a passing truck. The one in the rear view did not run. I drove past it. I looked away. I told myself I had not seen anything strange. I had been awake 9 hours and had seen a man's shadow walk wrong, and had heard my father's voice on a public address system, and had carried a paper-wrapped package with my name on it out of a meat case in a brown cardboard box, and a cottontail rabbit was not the strange thing in the morning. The country between the town and Ray's land was country I had walked since I could walk. It was country my father had walked before me, on Sundays when he had taken me out with him to look at the land Ray was going to clear for me one day. The land he and Ray had agreed on long before I had moved out of my mother's house in 2015. The land that had been picked out for me when I had been small enough to ride on his shoulders. 2 Mile Road and the Wash were as much my country as any country I owned. I knew the dips and rises of it. I knew where the prairie dog colony had moved to in 2019, after a hawk had taken too many of the original colony. I knew the small rusted-out cattle gate at mile 4 that had not been opened in 20 years and that nobody owned. I knew the windmill east of mile 3 that had not turned since the wind broke its bearing in some monsoon I had not seen happen. I drove past all of it the way I had driven past all of it 10,000 times before, and I drove past all of it that morning like a man driving through a country he had only seen in pictures. Everything was where it had been. Everything was exactly where it had been. The exactness was the problem. The country was holding its breath. At the wash crossing at mile 4, where the road dipped low and crossed the dry bed of Coldwater Wash, the truck slowed automatically the way it did at the dip, and Boone, who I had left in the trailer at the start of my shift the night before, would not have been in the truck except that I had a habit of imagining him in the seat next to me when I was driving home. And so I looked at the empty passenger seat at the wash, and I looked at it as if he were there. He was not there. The passenger seat was empty. The seat was the bench seat of the Ranger, which I had not put a cover on since the original cover had ripped 2 years ago, and there was a small worn-out patch on the side of the seat where Boone usually rode, where his haunches sat into the cushion. The patch was the wear of 6 years of a dog riding shotgun. I looked at the patch. I looked at the wash to my left as I crossed it. The wash ran east-west, perpendicular to the road, and at the crossing it was about 30 feet wide and 10 feet deep below the roadbed. The bed of the wash was sand and round stones, and the occasional piece of driftwood from some flood years ago. There was always something in the wash. There was always a coyote walking it at dawn, or a deer crossing it, or a roadrunner working its way along the bottom hunting for lizards in the sun. The wash was a corridor for animals. There was nothing in the wash that morning. The wash was empty. I drove across it I drove the last mile to Ray's place. Ray's land was on the right. Ray had a fenced pasture along the road where his half a dozen cattle stayed when they were not out on the Bureau of Land Management lease he had. The pasture had 4 Black Angus and 2 Hereford crosses in it that morning. The cattle were standing at the south end of the pasture, away from the road, in a tight cluster, all of them facing the road. They were not grazing. They were standing the way cattle stood when something they did not like had come through the pasture, when a wild dog had passed at night, when a mountain lion had been near. They were all looking at my trailer. I slowed at the turn into Ray's drive. I turned in. The drive came off 2 Mile Road and ran past Ray's house, a small adobe place he had built in 2001 with his own hands and the help of a man named Filomeno who had died of a stroke in 2010. And the drive came past the house and then forked, the right fork going to Ray's woodshed and his cattle gate, and the left fork going back to my trailer. I took the left fork. The trailer was where I had left it. The trailer was the trailer it had been when I had clocked in last night. A 2008 single-wide, white with brown trim, sitting on a poured pad that Ray and I had laid together. The skirt around the bottom was the same. The windows were the same. The aluminum awning over the front door was the same. The little block step at the front door was the same. The porch light was on. I had not left the porch light on. I had checked it the way I always checked it before I left for shift, which was to flip the switch by the door from the inside, hear the click, see the bulb go off, and pull the door closed behind me. I had done it last night at 9:15. The bulb had gone off. I had pulled the door closed. The porch light was on now. It was the only light on at the trailer. The inside lights were off, the way I had left them. The kitchen light was off. The bathroom light was off. The bedroom light was off. The porch light was on. The bulb was the new kind I had put in last fall. The kind that did not need replacing for years. The kind that was either on or off and was nothing in between. I rolled to a stop in the drive, about 40 feet from the trailer. I sat in the truck with the engine running. The country around the trailer was the country I had laid out for myself. There was the trailer in the middle of the cleared half-acre. There was the small shed I had built off the back where Boone's outdoor run was, which was a chain-link area maybe 10 feet square where Boone could be outside without me having to watch him. There was the small fire pit I had dug a year ago and not used since spring. There was the propane tank to the side of the trailer, the silver tank, sitting on its little concrete pad. There was the empty space where I sometimes parked the Ranger to one side of the door. There were no tracks in the dirt of the drive that did not belong there. The tracks of my own boots coming out of the trailer the night before were still there. The tracks of my truck pulling out were still there. There were the tracks of one ranch hand who had walked through yesterday afternoon on Ray's business, which were a brand of boots I knew, the Justin Roper that Ray's hand Tomas wore. The Tomas tracks were on the way out. There were no Tomas tracks coming back in. There were no other tracks. The dirt around the trailer was undisturbed. The porch light was on. I sat with my hands on the wheel and the engine running, and I looked at the trailer. I had not heard Boone bark. Boone barked when a truck came up the drive. He always barked. The trailer had a small dog door cut into the back, leading to the outdoor run, and Boone slept inside but had access to the run all night, and the run faced the drive at an angle where he could see vehicles coming. He would have heard me coming a quarter mile out. He would have been at the chain link by the time I rolled to a stop. He would have been on his hind legs at the chain link, barking the small happy bark he barked when I came home, because he heard the Ranger like he heard nothing else. He was not at the chain link. The chain link was empty. I cut the engine. The silence that came in was the silence of a high desert morning, the kind of silence that was not quite silence because there were small sounds in it, the small ticks of cooling metal under the hood, the small wind in the sage, the small clucks from the cattle at the south end of Ray's pasture. There were no birds. The first songbirds of the morning should have been calling. The thrashers should have been working the brush. The mockingbird should have been on the fence posts. There were no birds. There was no Boone. I sat in the truck for a long time. I do not know how long. I checked my watch. My watch said 7:36. I had clocked out at 7:04. I had driven home in less than half an hour. The clock said the right time. The clock said the time I expected. The morning had moved at the pace it usually moved. It was the rest of it that had stopped. I rolled the window down. I called the dog. Boone, I said. Not loud. The way I called him from the truck when I came home. The way he knew my voice. He did not bark. He did not come around the corner of the trailer. I called him again. Boone, smear bud. Nothing. I had a thought. The thought was a thought I did not want to think, and it pushed itself up into my head anyway, and it said, Boone is in the wash. Boone went out the dog door overnight, and Boone is in the wash, and there is no animal in the wash, because Boone is the only one. The thought was a thought a paranoid man might have had at the end of a long shift. It was a thought I did not have to believe. I did not believe it. I had no reason to believe it. The dog door from the outdoor run did not lead into the wash. The dog door led into the chain link run, and the chain link run was fenced, and Boone could not have gotten out of the run unless somebody had opened the gate. The gate was on the north side of the run. I could not see the gate from the truck. I had to get out of the truck to see the gate. I sat for another minute. The cattle in the south end of Ray's pasture had not moved. The cluster of them was still tight. They were still facing the trailer. I got out of the truck. The dirt of the drive crunched under my boot when I stepped down. I closed the truck door without slamming it, the way I closed it when I did not want to startle Boone, even though Boone was not there to startle. I walked toward the trailer slow. I walked the way Marlin walked when he was looking at something he was going to need to look at carefully. I had not walked that way before that morning. I walked it now, without telling my body to do it. The body had learned. I went around the south side of the trailer. The south side was where the propane tank was. I walked past the tank. I walked past the kitchen window, which was not lit. I walked toward the back of the trailer, where the chain link run was. The gate of the chain link run was open. It was not just open. It was hung wide, swung all the way back against the post on the trailer side, the way it would have been if a person had opened it on purpose to give wide clearance to walk through. The carabiner that held the gate closed was clipped to the chain link panel 2 posts down, like somebody had unclipped it and clipped it neatly out of the way. I had clipped the gate last night before I left. I had clipped it the way I always clipped it. I had checked it. Boone was not in the run. The dog door cut into the back of the trailer was open. The little plastic flap was hanging straight down, the way it hung when the dog door was being used, or had just been used. It would not hang straight down on its own. The hinges on the flap had enough resistance to hold it slightly tilted, unless something was pushing it from the other side. I stood at the open gate, and I looked at the dog door for a long time. I called the dog. Boone. Boone. Samir Bud. I heard him from inside the trailer, through the dog door. I heard him make the small sound he made when he heard me come home, the small high whine in the back of his throat, the sound he made before he started barking. The sound was him. The sound was Boone. The sound was muffled by the trailer wall, but I heard it through the open dog door. He was inside. I had not let him in. The dog door went from the chain link run to the inside of the trailer, and to be inside he would have had to come through the run from somewhere, or somebody had to have brought him through the front door. And the run gate was wide open, with the carabiner clipped to a panel 2 posts down. He was inside, and the gate was open. He whined again. The whine was a little louder. He had heard me. He could smell me coming. He was telling me to come in. I went around the trailer back to the front. I came around the corner. The porch light was still on. The front door was the front door. The front door was closed. I stepped up onto the block step. I put my hand on the door handle. I felt the handle. The handle was the painted aluminum handle the trailer had come with. The handle was cool. The handle was the temperature of the morning, which was the high desert morning cool that came before the sun got high enough to warm anything. I felt the handle for a count of 3. I turned the handle. The door opened. The smell came out of the trailer with the door. The smell was the smell of the inside of my trailer, which was the smell of Boone, and the smell of laundry I had not put away, and the smell of the coffee maker that I left on warm sometimes, and the smell of the foam mattress in the bedroom. The smell was my home smell. Under the home smell was another smell. The other smell was the smell of creosote. The other smell was faint. Boone came up to the door from the kitchen. He came up to the door at the normal speed. He came up to the door when I came home, which was a fast walk that wanted to be a run, but that he had trained himself out of because he had knocked me over once when he was a puppy, and he had not done it again. He came up, he nosed my hand, he pushed his head under my palm, he whined, the small whine, his tail wagged. The tail wagged, the small wag he wagged when he was happy I was home but worried about something. I had seen that wag. The wag was the wag that came when there was a strange dog out in the brush nearby that he wanted me to know about, or when somebody had come down the drive who he did not know. He looked back over his shoulder. He looked back over his shoulder into the kitchen. The kitchen at the front of my trailer was a small kitchen, an L shape, with the sink on one wall and the stove and the small fridge on the other wall, and a fold-down table I had bolted to the wall by the door. The kitchen had 2 chairs. One chair was a folding chair I used when I had food at the table, which was not often. The other chair was a kitchen chair I had taken out of my mother's house when she had moved to Phoenix, the same chair my father had sat in at her kitchen table for the last 16 years of his life. The chair he had sat in the morning he had asked me to take the trash to the curb. The kitchen chair was set in its usual place, pushed back from the table at a slight angle, the angle a person left when they had sat in a chair and gotten up to do something else. There was somebody in the chair. I could not see him clearly. The kitchen lights were off and the porch light was behind me and the morning sun was coming in through the kitchen window at the wrong angle for me to see anybody in the chair. I could see the outline of him. He was sitting in the chair. He had his hands on his knees, palms down, the way my father had sat. He was the size of my father. He had his hair the way my father had worn his hair. His head was inclined slightly toward the door the way my father had inclined his head when he was listening for somebody coming. I could not see his face. He spoke. His voice was my father's. He said, "Come on in, Cole. Shut the door behind you." I stood on the block step. I did not move. Boone whined again at my hand. The chair waited. The porch light was on. The cattle at the south end of Ray's pasture had begun to make noise, a low, confused noise. Cattle did not make noise like that. Cattle made the noise they were making when the herd had been moved and was unsettled, when something had passed through the pasture they did not like and could still smell. The wind had stopped. The morning had gone still. The sun was up over the mesas. The shadow of the door I was standing in front of fell into the kitchen, across the floor, and reached the foot of the kitchen chair. My shadow stopped at the chair. The shadow of the person in the chair did not match the body of the person in the chair. The shadow of the person in the chair was longer than the body and had the wrong shape at the head. I heard my own breathing. "Cole," the voice said. The patient voice. The patient version of my father's voice. The voice from the third ask. The voice that had been on the intercom 40 minutes ago and on Reggie's mouth 30 minutes ago. "Come in and shut the door." I did not move. Behind me, on Ray's pasture, one of the Hereford crosses bellowed once, the long open bellow a cow made when it had been pushed against a fence. The bellow rolled across the country and came back off the mesas faintly. Boone leaned against my leg. He pressed his shoulder against my calf. He did not move. He did not look back at the chair again. He just leaned. The thing in the chair waited. The morning was going to do what it was going to do. The sun was going to come up the rest of the way. The light was going to fill the kitchen. The figure in the chair was going to become visible to me, whether I went in or whether I stood on the block step and held the door open and let the light arrive on its own. It was going to be a face. I knew this. It was going to be a face I knew. I knew this. The shadow on the floor lengthened a quarter inch as the sun came up by a degree. The morning kept coming. The sun came up by another degree. The light in the kitchen went from gray to a soft pale gold, the way the high desert light always went in those first 10 minutes of full morning, and the figure in the chair came into clearer view. His shoulders were my father's shoulders. The slope of them was right. The shoulders of a man who had spent his life under the hood of a vehicle, rounded forward a fraction at the top, the muscle in the deltoids, the muscle of a man who had lifted air filters and tire irons for a living. The collar of his shirt was my father's collar. The shirt was a denim work shirt buttoned up to the throat, the same denim work shirt that had been on the man at register 6.5 hours earlier. The cuffs were buttoned at the wrists. The cuffs were buttoned the way my father had buttoned them, with the small extra fold at the elbow that he had picked up from some uncle of his I had never met. His hands were on his knees. His hands were the hands of a man my father's age. The fingers were thick. The nails were short. There was a small white scar across the back of the left hand, the scar of a knife slip during a deer dressing in 1999. A scar I had seen on my father's hand 1,000 times because it had been the kind of scar he had liked to show off when somebody asked about it. The scar was where it was supposed to be. His face was not yet entirely visible. The light was coming up. The light was getting there. I could see the bottom of his jaw. I could see the small line of stubble that ran along the jaw, the same length of stubble my father had carried by midweek, the same color. I could see the corner of his mouth. The corner of his mouth was relaxed, not smiling, not frowning, the corner of a mouth at rest. The light came up another degree. His eyes were closed. I saw the eyes when the light reached his face. He had his eyes closed the way a man closed his eyes in a sunbeam. The soft, relaxed close, the eyes a man closed in his own kitchen on a Sunday morning when he had nowhere to be. The eyelids were my father's eyelids. The crease at the corner where he had a deep wrinkle from squinting against 20 years of windshield was my father's crease. The eyebrows were the right eyebrows. The face was my father's face. It was the face I had not seen in 12 years and 4 months, and I had not been ready to see it. I had imagined this face on no morning in any of those 12 years. I had not seen this face in any dream I could remember. I had let the face slip away from me deliberately, the way I let a lot of things slip away, because keeping it was harder than letting it go. I was looking at it now. I could not look away. "Cole," he said, with his eyes closed. With his mouth that was my father's mouth. "Step in. Shut the door. Let me look at you." I did not step in. I did not shut the door. I did not let him look at me. I stood on the block step, and Boone leaned harder against my leg, and the cattle in Ray's pasture had gone silent again, and the wind had not picked back up, and the morning kept on coming. The light reached the rest of his face. The face was my father's face, the way the shoulders were my father's shoulders, perfect in every detail I could put a memory to, every line where I remembered a line, every freckle where I remembered a freckle. The face had been put together carefully. The face had been put together by something that had paid attention. The face had been built the way a model was built, with reference, with patience, and with the small dust of imperfection that any model carried, because no model was ever quite the original. The face was the face I knew, except for one thing. The face was breathing wrong. A man breathing with his eyes closed in a kitchen chair on a Sunday morning breathed slow and even, with the chest rising and falling in a small wave, with the nostrils flaring just enough to let the air go in and out. The face in the chair was not doing that. The chest was not moving. The nostrils were not moving. The face was sitting there relaxed without breathing, and the lips were slightly parted the way a man's lips parted in sleep, and no air was going in or out of them. He was not breathing. "You don't have to look so worried," he said. His lips moved when he spoke. His chest still did not move. The voice came out of his mouth without coming from his lungs. The voice was the voice, and the mouth was the mouth, and the rest of him was a thing that was not a man. "Come in," he said. "Sit down." "You aren't him," I said. I did not know I was going to speak. The words came out the way the word "don't" had come out an hour earlier at the front of the Walmart, low and rough and on their own. The face smiled. The smile was my father's smile, slow and gentle, the smile he had used on me when I had said something he thought was funnier than I had meant it to be. The smile pulled the right side of the mouth a quarter-inch higher than the left, because my father's smile had been crooked from a sleep position he had been stuck in as a child that had set his face that way. The crooked was right. You always were smarter than I gave you credit for, he said. The voice had a small new thing in it. The small new thing had not been there on the intercom or on Reggie's mouth. The small new thing was the second tone under the voice, the dry rasp Marlin had described, and that I had thought I heard at the register, the buzz of a power line, a quarter-mile away. The rasp was there in the kitchen now. The rasp was there because the figure was no longer trying to hide it. The figure was letting it show. "Where's my dad?" I said. "Your dad is where your dad has been for 12 years, son. You know where that is. You go put flowers on it in the spring." "That's not what I'm asking." The face opened its eyes. I had thought the eyes would be my father's eyes. I had braced for them. I had told myself, in the half-second it took the eyelids to lift, that I was going to see my father's eyes in my father's face, and I was going to have to find a way to not break. The eyes were not my father's eyes. The eyes were the color of dirty amber. The eyes were the color of a streetlight seen through a smoke-stained window. The eyes were the color the man's truck headlights had been in the lot at 2 a.m, the color of bulbs that had gone yellow from age, the color of butter that had been left in the sun. The eyes did not look at me out of my father's face the way eyes looked out of a face. They looked at me from somewhere further back than the face. Like the face was a window, the eyes were sitting behind, and I was looking through the window into a deeper room. The eyes did not blink. "Sit down, Cole." "No." "Sit down." "No. Your daddy and you never did get to have a coffee. You were too young when he went. There's a pot on the stove." There was a pot on the stove. I had not made a pot on the stove. I had set the drip coffee maker to brew at 6:45 the night before, the way I always did, so that when I came home it would be warm. The pot on the stove was the steel percolator that had belonged to my father, the percolator that had been at my mother's house for the last 12 years, and that I had not taken with me when I had moved out. The percolator that my mother kept on the top shelf above her refrigerator in Phoenix. The percolator was on the stove. A small string of vapor was rising from the spout. "I have not had that coffee pot in this trailer," I said. "You have one now. You brought it here." "I brought a lot of things, son. I've been waiting 12 years for this morning." "You're not him." "No, I am not him. I am not him at all. But I am wearing a piece of him that he is not using anymore, and I am wearing it because it fits, and because you needed to see it. I am wearing it because you have been holding on to a face you did not let yourself look at, and I am giving you that face this morning for free. I am giving you a gift, Cole." "That is not a gift." "It is the gift I have to give." I took a step back. The block step was small. There was not much room on it. I took a step back, and my heel went off the edge of the step into the dirt of the drive. Boone moved with me. Boone did not turn around. Boone kept his eyes on the chair. He moved with my leg without looking back, the way a dog moved who had decided his job was to stay between me and what was in the room. I took another step back. The light from the open door fell out into the drive in a tall yellow rectangle. "I'll come back another time, then," the voice said. It said it the way a man said it when he had been told an appointment was inconvenient, friendly, patient, with the small lift at the end of the sentence that promised a return. The figure stood. He stood the way my father had stood up from a chair. He put his hands on his knees and pushed and rose. The motion was perfect. The motion was the motion of a 60-year-old man with a tire shop back, except my father had never made it to 60, and the motion was a motion my father had not had a chance to perform. The figure stood. He turned in the kitchen. He walked toward the back of the trailer. He did not walk fast. He did not walk toward me. He walked deeper into the trailer, toward the bedroom hallway, the way a man walked who had decided he was done in the kitchen and was going to do something else somewhere else. I did not follow him. I stood in the doorway with my heel off the block step and the dog at my leg, and I watched my father's back walk out of the kitchen and into the small hallway that led to the bedroom and the bathroom and the back door of the trailer. He walked into the hallway. The hallway swallowed him. I heard the soft sound of the back door opening. The back door at the rear of the trailer opened onto the small wood porch. I had not finished. The porch that gave out onto the cleared half-acre that ran back to the wash. I heard the back door open, and I heard the screen creak, and I heard the back door click softly closed. I heard nothing after that. Boone whined low in his throat. I stayed in the doorway for a long count. I counted to 30. I counted to 60. I counted to 100. Boone did not move. He stayed against my leg. The pressure of his shoulder on my calf was the only solid thing in the morning. At 100, I stepped down off the block, stepped into the drive. I did not go into the trailer. I closed the front door. From the outside, I closed it gently. The latch clicked. The latch caught. The porch light was still on. I walked around to the back of the trailer with Boone at my heel. The chain-link gate of the run was still wide open. The dog door was still hanging straight down. I walked past the run to the back of the trailer. The wood porch was empty. The back door was closed. The dirt of the cleared half-acre between the porch and the wash had no tracks in it. There were no boot prints leading away. There were no boot prints anywhere except mine and Boone's, which were the prints we made walking back from the run to the porch in that minute. The dirt was undisturbed. The figure had walked out the back door and not made tracks. The figure had walked out the back door and gone wherever he had gone, and the wash was the closest cover, and the wash was 100 yards away, and there were no tracks between the porch and the wash. And there were no tracks, because the figure had not been a thing that left tracks. The figure had walked into the morning, and the morning had not held a record of him. Boone leaned against my leg again. He looked up at me. His eyes were Boone's eyes. He whined the small whine. I crouched. I put my arms around the dog. I held him for a long minute. He stood and let me hold him. He pressed his head into my shoulder. He smelled the way Boone smelled, the doggish smell of a German Shepherd mix that had been sleeping inside a trailer all night, the warm, clean smell of fur and dog skin. He did not smell like creosote. He did not smell like anything wrong. I let him go. I stood. I went back around the trailer to the front. I left the porch light on. I left the front door closed. I left the back door closed. I left the trailer the way it was. I called the dog up into the Ranger. He jumped into the passenger seat. He sat in the worn-out patch on the bench seat. He looked at me. He thumped his tail once on the seat. I got in. I started the truck. I backed out of the drive. I drove out of Ray's property without stopping at the cattle pasture. The Hereford cross was still bellowing in the south end of the pasture, but the other cattle had started to spread back out and graze. The morning was working its way back to a morning. I turned onto 2 Mile Road. I turned north toward town. I drove to where I had cell signal, which was about mile 2, near the prairie dog colony, where the country flattened enough that a tower reached down. I pulled the truck onto the shoulder. I turned the engine off. I sat with Boone in the seat next to me, and I took my phone out of my pocket, and I scrolled to the 3-way text thread that Lena had set up. I typed, "Figure came to the trailer. Or my dad. It left. I am okay. Boone is okay. Heading to Danis." I sent it. The phone did the small swooping sound it made when a text went out. I sat with the phone in my hand. I watched it for a reply. Lena's reply came back in about 20 seconds. "On my way. Do not go in Danny's place alone. Wait for me at the gas station on the corner of her street. I am 12 minutes out." Danny's reply came back 10 seconds after Lena's. "I am awake. Coffee is on. Drive safe." Marlon's reply came back after another 15 seconds. "Cole. The name of the one running this country starts with the same letter as your daddy's name. You understand me?" I read Marlon's text. I read it twice. I understood him. My father's name had been Tommy Patterson. I put the phone back in my pocket. I put my hand on the back of Boone's neck. He pushed up into my hand. He sat in the seat next to me, and he watched the road ahead of us through the windshield, and the morning sun was coming up over the mesas behind us, and the Interstate 40 traffic was starting to pick up the way it picked up on the frontage at 8 in the morning, and the country was a country a man drove through with a dog on a Tuesday in the second week of August. I started the truck. I pulled back onto 2 Mile Road. I drove into town. I drove to the gas station on the corner of Danny Street. I parked at the side of the lot. I left the engine running. Boone watched the door. I watched the door. We did not get out. We waited. The fluorescent sign over the gas station pumps flickered once. It flickered the way the lot lights at the Walmart had flickered all night, the small once and back of an old bulb that was not quite ready to give out yet. I watched the sign. The sign settled. I watched the road. The gas station was open. The gas station was always open. The inside lights were on, and a man I knew by sight was behind the counter. A man named Curtis who worked the morning shift, who wore the same blue uniform shirt every day with his name embroidered on the left side. Curtis was at the register. There were 2 pickups at the pumps. A man in a green John Deere cap was filling a propane tank at the propane refill station along the south wall. The morning had begun. I sat in the Ranger with the engine running and Boone in the seat, and I watched the comings and goings. The road into town from the south carried the early traffic, a few work trucks coming in for the shift change, 1 car with the headlights still on from a night drive. The light was good now. The light was the full pale gold of an August morning before the sun got hot. The sky was clear except for a few high cirrus over the mesas, the kind of morning that, on a normal Tuesday, I would have driven straight through to my pillow. I watched the road. Boone watched the road. The dog had not lain down on the seat the way he usually lay down on the seat. He was sitting up. He was alert. His ears were forward. He was watching the gas station and the pumps and the parking lot and the road in equal turns, and his eyes were doing the slow, systematic sweep he did when he was working something out. He was not panting. He was breathing slow. A red Silverado pulled into the gas station lot off the road. The driver was an older man in a straw cowboy hat. He parked at pump 4. He got out. He stretched. He walked around to the back of the truck and reached for the fuel cap. His shadow lay long across the asphalt from the morning sun. The shadow had the shape his body had, the long, thin shape of an old rancher, and the shadow moved with him when he moved. The shadow was a shadow. I watched it. I watched it until I was sure. I had a new tic. I was going to be watching shadows from now on. Forever, maybe. I was going to be looking at the ground next to every person I passed and checking whether the dark shape behind them moved when they moved. I was going to be doing this until I died, or until I made myself stop, or until I learned a different way to be afraid. I watched the old rancher fuel up. He did it the way an old rancher fueled up, with 1 hand on the pump and 1 hand on his hip and his weight cocked into the truck. He looked out at the road while he pumped. He looked at nothing in particular. He was a man waiting for a tank to fill. The pump clicked off. He pulled the nozzle out. He hung it up. He closed the cap. He got back in his truck. He started the engine. He pulled out of the lot. His shadow had been his shadow the whole time. I let my breath out. I had not known I was holding it. Boone exhaled too, a small huff through his nose. A tumbleweed worked its way along the edge of the gas station lot against the chain link of the propane refill area, the same kind of tumbleweed that had hung up against the light pole at the Walmart all night. It was a smaller one. It rolled until it caught on a piece of bent metal at the bottom of the fence, and then it stopped. It would stay there until somebody came along and moved it. The wind that had carried it had given up. I thought about the tumbleweed at the Walmart, hung against the light pole, that had not moved while I had stood on the dock with Marlin and watched the truck come in. The tumbleweed had stayed put. The wind had moved 100 other things in the lot and had left the tumbleweed alone. The tumbleweed had been in a quiet pocket. The wind did not enter. I thought about the air in aisle 13, which had not moved the candle wick when it should have. I thought about the back porch of my trailer, where there had been no tracks. I thought about the way nothing in the wash had been moving when I had crossed it at mile 4, and about how the cattle in the south end of Ray's pasture had stood facing the trailer in a tight cluster, and about the kind of country a man lived in where the wind sat still and the animals went silent, and a thing walked through without leaving any trace of having been. I had been living in that country my whole life. I had not noticed. 2 minutes later, a Tahoe came up the road from the south with the sheriff decal on the side. Lena, She turned into the lot. She pulled up next to my Ranger and rolled her window down. I rolled mine down. She looked at me. She looked at the dog. She looked at me again. "You look like hell," she said. "Yeah, he okay. He's okay." Trailer. Empty. "You sure?" He walked out the back door. He did not make any tracks. She was quiet for a second. "I am going to send a unit to your place," she said. "Sit on it until I can get out there myself. You are not going to find anything." "I know I am not going to find anything. I am going to send a unit anyway. I would rather have a deputy parked at the bottom of Ray's drive for a few hours than not have one parked there. Ray awake yet? Probably. Call him. Tell him to expect a cruiser. Tell him whatever you want to tell him about why. He doesn't need details. Just tell him don't worry about it and don't go down to the trailer." "Yeah? Follow me to Danny's." "Yeah?" She rolled the window up. She pulled out of the gas station lot and waited at the corner for me. I put the Ranger in gear. I followed her. Boone was still sitting up. He watched out the front of the truck. He watched the back of Lena's cruiser. He watched the houses we passed. He watched the morning. It was 8:45 when we got to Danny's duplex. The street was a quiet residential street off the frontage, 2 blocks of single-story rentals with carports and gravel front yards. Danny's place was the second on the left, the one with the small juniper out front. Her truck was in the carport. The porch light was off. The window blinds were up. The front door opened as Lena pulled up to the curb, and Danny stood in the doorway in a clean t-shirt and a pair of sweatpants, with her hair wet from the shower and a coffee mug in her hand. She looked at me. She looked at Boone. She looked at Lena. She did not say anything. She stepped back from the door and held it open. I parked. I cut the engine. I sat for a long second with my hand on the key. I looked at the duplex. I looked at the woman standing in the doorway. I looked at the dog in the seat next to me. I got out. I let Boone out my side. He jumped down. He stood on the gravel and looked at the door. He looked back at me. He waited. He was a good dog. He had always been a good dog. He had stayed with me on the block step at the trailer when he could have run, and he had ridden in the truck without panic. And he was standing in a stranger's driveway with his ears forward and his tail at half-mast and his eyes on me, waiting to be told what we were doing. "Come on, Bud," I said. We went inside. Lena came in behind us. She had parked her cruiser on the street and walked up the gravel with her hat in one hand and the olive drab mug in the other, and she did not say anything to Danny at the door, and Danny did not say anything to her. Danny just stepped back and let her through. The door closed behind me. The lock turned. The morning kept on coming on the other side of the door, and the sun came up the rest of the way, and somewhere out past the wash and the rail bed and the empty space between, a thing that had walked out the back door of my trailer was walking. It was walking with no shadow and no track and no footprint and no breath, and it had said it would be back another time, and I believed it. Sitting on Danny's green couch with my boots off and Boone at my feet and a cup of coffee in my hand, with the morning sun coming through the blinds and pale slats across the floor, I believed it. I believed it the way I had not let myself believe a thing in a long time. I drank the coffee. I did not say anything for a while. The 3 of us sat in Danny's living room, and we did not say anything. We did not have to. We were going to have to say a lot of things soon, but not yet. The coffee was strong and good. The blinds threw their slats across the floor. Boone breathed slow at my feet. The morning passed. That was the first day. That was how it started. If you have been keeping up with this, you know about the man in the lot with the wrong shadow, and about the thing wearing my coworker's face in the doorway, and about the candle burning at the end of aisle 13 with a hunting knife price tag stuck to its label. If you have not, here is where I am. I work nights at the Walmart in Dry Wells, Arizona, with a man named Marlon and a woman named Danny and a kid named Reggie, and a deputy named Lena Boyd runs the beat that includes our store. Last shift, something walked into the store that wasn't a man, and it knew my name, and it left things for me to find. It took Reggie for a few minutes and put him back with a cut on his head, and it walked out into the morning. By the time I got home, it was in my kitchen, sitting in my father's chair, wearing my father's face. It left when I told it to leave. It said it would come back. Marlon says, "The one in our country has a name, and the name starts with T, and my father's name was Tommy. I don't know yet what that means. I am sitting on Danny's couch, and I am drinking coffee, and the sun is up, and I am alive. That's where I am."